Hi guys, tonight we travel far beyond cities, beyond roads, beyond anything that would feel familiar to you, into a time when the world was wide, quiet and mostly untouched. You find yourself waking slowly on a cool surface of packed earth and dry grass inside a shallow rock shelter. The light is faint at first, a soft grey glow slipping in from the open edge of the stone above you. It feels gentle, almost hesitant, as if the day itself is still deciding whether to begin. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, I would love to hear where you are in the world right now and what time it is where you are. There is something comforting in knowing that while you lie here listening, others are doing the same, scattered across different places and moments. Now dim the lights and let yourself drift into this older world. You lie still for a moment longer, not because you are unwilling to move, but because there is no rush. There is no alarm waiting to push you forward, no list of tasks forming in your mind. Instead, there is only the slow rhythm of breath, your own and that of others nearby. The air feels cool against your skin, carrying a faint mixture of scents. Dry earth, a trace of smoke. Something soft and organic that you cannot quite name but that feels familiar in a quiet, grounding way. A mainstream historical understanding suggests that around 50,000 years ago, early Homo sapiens lived in small mobile groups, often using natural shelters like caves and rock overhangs. These spaces offered protection from wind rain and predators, but they were never permanent homes in the way we might think of today. You begin to notice the others, not all at once, but gradually as your eyes adjust to the dim light. A figure nearby shifts slightly, turning onto their side. Another exhales deeply, the sound soft but steady. Somewhere closer to the entrance, you hear a quiet murmur, the beginning of wakefulness. You do not speak, not yet, there is no immediate need. Instead, you press your hand lightly against the ground beside you. The surface is cool but not unpleasant. It holds a certain firmness, a quiet reassurance. This is where you slept. This is where you wake. And for now, that is enough. You might expect this moment to feel harsh or uncomfortable. No mattress, no blankets in the modern sense, no controlled temperature. But the reality is softer than that expectation. Your body has adapted to this world. The ground feels natural, not foreign. The air, though cool, is not shocking. Researchers continue to question exactly how comfortable prehistoric sleeping arrangements were, but evidence suggests that early humans often used layers of grasses, hides, and other natural materials to create insulation. Some archaeological sites even show signs of deliberately arranged bedding areas, hinting at a level of care that might surprise you. A small sound draws your attention, a faint crackle almost imperceptible at first. You turn your head slightly toward it, and there, deeper within the shelter, you see it. The fire. Or rather what remains of it. A low glowing bed of embers, dimly lit, pulsing softly in shades of red and orange. It is not the roaring fire you might imagine, but something quieter, something steady. The fire never truly goes out. That is one of the quiet rules of this world. Fire once made is preserved, carried, protected. It is not something you casually recreate each day. The knowledge of how to start fire existed, but it was not always easy or reliable. So the group tends to it carefully feeding it when needed, letting it rest when possible. A quirky detail that often goes unnoticed is that some early human groups may have transported embers over long distances using bark or other natural containers, ensuring that fire remained with them even as they moved. It is a small act, but one that changes everything. You shift slightly, sitting up now, your movement slow and deliberate. The air near the ground feels cooler, but as you lift yourself, you notice a faint warmth lingering higher up, closer to where the heat of the fire once gathered. It is subtle but present. Your hand brushes against something beside you, a folded piece of hide, worn but soft. You recognize it not as an object of comfort alone, but as something practical. Protection from cold, a barrier against dampness. A layer between your body and the ground. You pull it slightly closer around your shoulders. The entrance of the shelter begins to brighten. The grey light deepens, shifting towards something softer, more defined. Shapes outside become clearer. The outline of low grasses. A distant rise in the land. The faint suggestion of trees further away. You hear footsteps now. Light unhurried, someone near the entrance moves out into the open. You do not see them fully, only the passing shadow and the slight disturbance of air, but it is enough to signal the beginning of the day. There is no spoken announcement, no formal start, just movement. Scholars remain divided on how structured early human daily routines were. Some suggest that life followed loose patterns shaped by light weather and food availability, while others argue for more consistent rhythms within groups. What seems clear is that flexibility was essential. You take a slow breath. The air feels different now, slightly warmer, slightly more alive. Outside the world is opening. But inside there is still this quiet pocket of time, a moment between sleep and activity, between stillness and motion. You place your hand on the ground once more, steadying yourself as you rise fully. Your muscles respond without resistance. There is a natural ease in the movement, as if your body already understands what comes next, even if your mind lingers in the calm of waking. Another figure sits up nearby. You catch a brief glance. No words are exchanged, but there is recognition, familiarity, a shared understanding that does not need to be spoken aloud. This is your group, not large, not distant, close. Life here depends on that closeness, on knowing who is beside you, on trusting that each person plays a role even if that role shifts from day to day. You might think of modern mornings, the rush, the noise, the sudden pull into activity, but here there is none of that urgency. The transition is gradual, almost gentle. You take a step toward the entrance. The ground beneath your feet changes slightly, from the softer interior surface to something firmer, more textured. Small stones press lightly against your skin, not painfully, but enough to remind you of the world outside. As you reach the edge of the shelter, you pause. The light meets you fully now, soft but clear. The landscape stretches out before you, open and quiet, holding the promise of movement, of effort, of survival. But for this moment, just this one, you stand between two worlds, the stillness of the night behind you and the unfolding day ahead. You step forward into the open air and the shift feels immediate, though not abrupt. The coolness lingers, brushing lightly against your skin, but there is also a softness in the morning that feels almost balanced. Not cold, not warm, just steady in a way that asks nothing from you. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, scattered with small stones and patches of dry grass. You feel each variation as you walk, your body adjusting without conscious effort. There is no footwear in the modern sense, no thick soles separating you from the earth. Instead, there is a direct connection, a quiet awareness of where you place each step. A mainstream historical understanding notes that early humans developed strong, resilient feet adapted to varied terrain, allowing them to travel long distances across landscapes that would feel challenging to us today. Over time, the structure of the human foot itself reflects this history of constant movement and adaptation. You pause just outside the shelter and look back for a moment. Inside, the dim glow of the embers still pulses faintly, barely visible now in the growing light. A few figures remain seated or crouched, moving slowly, tending to small tasks that do not require urgency. Others begin to emerge one by one, their movements unhurried, their expressions calm and focused. There is no leader calling instructions, no signal to begin, and yet the group begins to move. You notice how naturally it happens. One person bends to gather a bundle of dried grass, another checks the edge of a hide, running their fingers along its surface as if testing its strength. Someone else kneels near a cluster of stones, adjusting their position with quiet care. It is not chaotic, it's not silent either. It is something in between. A low hum of activity, steady and familiar. You find yourself moving as well, drawn into the rhythm without needing to think about it. Your hands reach toward a nearby object, a simple stone tool left where it was last used. You pick it up, feeling its weight, its balance. Simple at first glance, but not careless. A quirky detail that often surprises people is that some prehistoric stone tools required a surprising level of skill to produce. The shaping process, known as knapping, involved striking stone in precise ways to create sharp edges. Mistakes could ruin the tool, meaning knowledge and experience were essential even for something that appears basic. You turn the tool slightly in your hand, noticing the edges where small flakes were removed. Each mark is deliberate. Each angle serves a purpose. This is not random. It is learned. Researchers continue to question how this knowledge was first developed and shared. Some suggest it emerged gradually over many generations, while others propose that certain individuals may have played key roles in refining techniques. What is clear is that this knowledge did not exist in isolation. It moved through the group, carried in observation and imitation. You crouch down near a flat area of ground. A few scattered objects lie there. Fragments of plant material, a piece of bone, another stone tool slightly different in shape. You recognize this place not as a formal workspace, but as a spot where things happen, where tasks unfold naturally. Your fingers brush against the surface of the earth as you begin to sort through the items. There is a quiet satisfaction in the movement. No rush, no pressure to finish quickly, just the steady process of doing. Nearby you hear a soft sound, a brief exchange of voices. Not words in the way you might expect, but something more fluid. Short sounds, tones, small gestures that carry meaning within the group. A hand movement, a shift of posture, a glance that lingers just long enough. You look up. Two figures stand a short distance away facing each other. One holds a small bundle of something gathered earlier. The other points toward the open land, then back toward the bundle. There is a pause, then a slight nod. Agreement, without a single structured sentence. A mainstream historical understanding suggests that by this time early humans likely had some form of spoken language, though its complexity remains uncertain. The development of language is still one of the most debated topics in human evolution, with scholars exploring everything from vocal anatomy to social necessity. You watch the exchange for a moment longer. It feels efficient, natural, nothing wasted. You stand again, brushing your hands lightly against your sides to clear the dust. The texture of your clothing, rough but flexible, shifts with the movement. It does not cling or restrict. It simply exists shaped to serve its purpose. The light continues to change. It grows warmer now, not in temperature yet, but in tone. The grey has softened into pale gold, spreading slowly across the land. Shadows stretch long and thin, then begin to shorten as the sun rises higher. You step further away from the shelter. The space opens around you. Low grasses sway gently, their movement subtle but constant. A faint breeze moves across the landscape, carrying with it the scent of earth, and something slightly sharper, perhaps from distant plants or damp soil. You inhale slowly. There is no artificial scent here, no layered fragrances or unfamiliar chemicals, just the raw, simple composition of the natural world. And yet it does not feel empty. It feels full in a quieter way. A figure approaches from your left. Their steps are light, deliberate. They carry something in their hands, a small collection of plant stems and leaves. As they pass, you catch a glimpse of the bundle. Different shapes, different colours. Some fresh, others already beginning to dry. Gathering has already begun. Some historians suggest that gathering plant foods may have provided a significant portion of early human diets, often more reliable than hunting. While hunting captures attention, it is gathering that sustains consistency. You watch as the figure moves past you, heading back toward the shelter. Their movements are steady, practiced. There is no hesitation in what they collect. Knowledge lives in these small choices. Which plant to pick, which to avoid, which to return to later. You might wonder how long it takes to learn something like that. To recognize subtle differences in leaves, stems, textures, to remember what nourishes and what harms. It's not something taught in a single moment. It is absorbed over time. Through repetition, through watching, through quiet correction. You take a few more steps forward, feeling the ground shift slightly beneath you as it slopes gently downward. The shelter now sits behind you, partially hidden by the curve of the land. You are no longer inside its protection, but you are not alone either. The group spreads out not in a rigid formation, but in a loose pattern that maintains connection. You can still see them, still hear faint movements, still sense their presence. This distance is comfortable, necessary even. It allows space for different tasks, different roles, without breaking the bond that holds the group together. Scholars remain divided on how structured these roles were. Some believe early human groups had flexible roles based on immediate needs, while others argue for more consistent divisions, particularly between gathering and hunting activities. The truth may lie somewhere in between, shifting with the environment and circumstance. You bend slightly, noticing a small cluster of plants near your feet. Their leaves are broad, slightly rough to the touch. You reach out, brushing your fingers along the surface. There is a faint resistance, a texture that suggests usefulness. You hesitate for a moment, not out of uncertainty, but out of awareness. Every action here matters, even the smallest one. You look around, taking in the landscape once more, the light, the movement, the quiet rhythm of others working nearby. Then slowly you reach down and begin. You lower yourself beside the small cluster of plants, your knees pressing gently into the earth as your fingers move with quiet care. The leaves feel slightly coarse, their edges uneven but familiar. You do not pull them immediately. Instead, you pause, observing. There is a rhythm to this, not just movement but attention. You notice the colour of the leaves, the way they connect to the stem, the condition of the surrounding soil. These details might seem small, but here they matter. They always have. A mainstream historical understanding suggests that early humans developed deep environmental knowledge, allowing them to identify edible plants, medicinal herbs, and useful materials with remarkable accuracy. This knowledge was not written down. It lived in memory, passed from person to person across generations. You gently press your fingers around the base of one stem and pull. The plant gives way with a soft resistance, the roots releasing from the soil with a faint, almost satisfying motion. A small clump of earth clings to it. You shake it lightly, watching as the soil falls back to the ground in loose grains. The act feels simple, but not careless. You place the plant to one side, then reach for another. Nearby you hear a faint crackle. You glance back toward the shelter, where a figure now kneels beside the fire. The embers you saw earlier are being stirred, coaxed back into life. A small piece of dry materials is placed carefully on the top. Then another. The glow strengthens. Fire in this world is not a spectacle. It is a responsibility. A quirky detail that often goes unnoticed is that maintaining a steady fire required constant attention. Too much fuel could smother it. Too little could let it fade. Early humans learned to read the fire, to understand its needs in a way that feels almost like communication. You watch for a moment as a thin strand of smoke rises, drifting upward and then outward into the morning air. It moves slowly, carried by a light breeze, dissolving into something invisible. Researchers continue to question exactly when fire became a consistent part of daily human life. While evidence suggests controlled use of fire dates back hundreds of thousands of years, the extent to which it was reliably maintained across all groups remains a topic of ongoing study. You return your focus to the plants. Your hands move more confidently now. The hesitation has faded, replaced by a quiet certainty that comes from repetition. You gather a few more stems, placing them together in a small bundle. The ground shifts slightly beneath you as you adjust your position. A faint warmth begins to touch your back. The sun is rising higher now, its light reaching further across the landscape. The air, once cool and still, starts to carry a subtle change. Not warmth yet, but the promise of it. You sit back for a moment, resting your hands on your knees. Around you, the group continues its quiet work. Some remain near the shelter, tending to tools, preparing materials, watching the fire. Others, like you, have spread out into the surrounding land, each focused on a small task that contributes to something larger. No one is directing this, and yet it works. You might wonder how such a system holds together without clear rules or instructions, without schedules, without written plans. Scholars remain divided on this. Some suggest that early human groups relied heavily on shared understanding and social bonds rather than formal structures. Others argue that unspoken expectations and learned behaviours created a kind of invisible framework that guided daily life. Whatever the case, what you see here is not disorder. It is balance. You lean forward, observation, reaching toward another plant. This one is different. Its leaves are thinner, its stem more rigid. You hesitate, your fingers hovering just above it. Not everything is safe. Not everything is useful. The knowledge to tell the difference is not instinct alone. It is learned slowly through observation and experience. You withdraw your hand slightly, choosing instead to leave the plant where it is. A small decision, but an important one. In the distance you hear a sound, faint at first, almost blending into the background, then clearer, a bird call, sharp repeated, echoing across the open space. You lift your head, scanning the horizon. The sound comes again from somewhere higher, perhaps from a tree or a rocky outcrop. The world here is never silent. Even in its quietest moments, there is always something moving, something shifting, something alive. You gather your small bundle of plants and stand. The motion is smooth, practiced. Your body adjusts, naturally maintaining balance without effort. You brush a bit of dirt from your hands, then hold the bundle loosely at your side. For a moment, you simply stand there, taking it in. The light is stronger now, the shadows shorter. The shapes of the land clearer and more defined. You can see further, noticing details that were hidden before. A slight dip in the ground, a cluster of stones, a narrow path worn by repeated movement. These are not marked or named, but they are known. A mainstream historical understanding notes that early humans relied heavily on memory and spatial awareness to navigate their environment. Without maps or written directions, they developed an internal sense of place remembering, landmarks and pathways with remarkable precision. You begin to walk back toward the shelter, not in a straight line, but along a subtle curve that feels right. Your feet find the path without needing to search for it. Each step lands with quiet certainty. As you approach, you notice the fire again. It has changed. What was once a dim bed of embers is now a small but steady flame. Not large, not overwhelming, but alive. It flickers gently, casting soft light against the interior stone. The figure tending it sits nearby, watching closely. There is patience in that posture, an understanding that fire cannot be rushed. A quirky tidbit that researchers sometimes point out is that the presence of controlled fire may have extended human waking hours, allowing for more social interaction after dark. This simple shift could have played a role in the development of communication, storytelling, and group cohesion. You step back into the shelter. The air feels slightly warmer. Here now, the fire's influence spreading slowly through the space. The scent of smoke is more noticeable, but not overwhelming. It lingers in a way that feels familiar, almost comforting. You place your bundle of plants near a small collection of other gathered materials. No one tells you where to put them. You simply know. A figure nearby glances in your direction, then back to their task. The acknowledgement is brief but present. You settle down near the edge of the shelter once more, not to rest fully, but to pause, to observe, to let the rhythm continue around you. There is still much to be done, but there is no need to hurry. The day has only just begun. You remain seated for a short while, watching the small movements unfold around you, until your attention drifts back to the tools resting nearby. They lie scattered in no strict arrangement, yet not entirely random either. Each one has been placed down with a kind of quiet intention left within reach, for when it is needed again. You lean forward and pick one up. The stone feels cool at first, its surface slightly rough beneath your fingers. You turn it slowly, studying the edges. Thin flakes have been chipped away in careful patterns, forming a sharp line along one side. It is not symmetrical in the way modern objects often are, but it does not need to be. It works. That is enough. Widely accepted evidence shows that stone tools were among the most important technologies of prehistoric humans used for cutting, scraping, shaping, and preparing materials. These tools varied in form depending on their purpose, and even small differences in shape could change how they were used. You run your thumb lightly along the edge, careful not to press too hard. There is a precision here that is easy to overlook. This tool was not shaped in a single strike. It was formed gradually, each piece removed with intention. You shift slightly closer to the entrance where the light is stronger. The sun now reaches into the shelter, illuminating small particles in the air. Dust, ash, and faint traces of smoke drift slowly, visible only when the light catches them just right. It creates a quiet, almost floating atmosphere, as if time itself has slowed down. Nearby, a figure sits with a larger stone resting against their legs. In their hand, they hold another piece smaller, harder. You watch as they raise it, then bring it down with a controlled strike. A sharp sound echoes briefly through the space. Click! A small fragment breaks away. They pause, adjusting their grip, then strike again. Not with force, but with accuracy. Click! Another fragment falls. An often overlooked insight is that tool-making required not just strength, but a deep understanding of materials. Different types of stone behaved in different ways, and choosing the right one could make the difference between a useful tool and a broken piece of rock. You observe the rhythm. It is steady measured, not rushed. Each strike is followed by a moment of stillness, a brief inspection before the next move. There is patience here, a willingness to take time even when time itself is not measured in hours or minutes as you know them. You glance down at the tool in your own hand. It is already shaped, already usable. But even so, you feel the impulse to adjust it, to refine it slightly. You look around, noticing a smaller stone nearby that might serve the same purpose. You reach for it. It fits into your hand with a certain weight heavier than it looks. You bring it gently against the edge of your tool, not striking yet, just feeling the angle. There is hesitation, not fear but awareness. A single wrong strike could damage the edge. Some researchers suggest, while others disagree on how early humans learned these techniques. Did they practice alone through trial and error, or were they guided closely by others, corrected in subtle ways over time? The answer likely varies, but what you see here suggests that learning is never entirely solitary. You glance again toward the figure shaping their tool. Their movements are calm, almost meditative. They do not look up, but their presence is enough. A quiet example, a guide without instruction. You take a slow breath. Then carefully you strike. The sound is softer than you expected. A small chip breaks away, landing on the ground beside you. You pause immediately, examining the edge. It has changed. Slightly sharper, slightly cleaner. You feel a quiet satisfaction, not from achievement in a modern sense, but from alignment. The action matched the intention. You try again. This time the angle is different. The result less precise. The edge shifts, but not in the way you intended. You stop. There is no frustration, only adjustment. You turn the tool in your hand, considering it from another angle. The process continues slowly without urgency. Nearby another figure approaches, carrying a length of bone. They sit down a short distance away and begin working on it with a different tool, scraping along its surface in repeated strokes. The sound is softer than the sharp clicks of stone, more of a steady rasp. An interesting detail that often surprises people is that early humans used not only stone but also bonewood and other materials to create tools. Many of these have not survived in the archaeological record as well as stone, but their use is widely acknowledged. You watch the scraping motion for a moment, back and forth, back and forth. The repetition is calming in its own way. The shelter is no longer quiet, but it is not loud either. It holds a layered soundscape, the soft crackle of fire, the occasional strike of stone, the low murmur of voices, the gentle movement of bodies shifting, working, existing. It feels complete. You lower your hand, setting the tool beside you. For now it is enough. You lean back, slightly resting your weight against the stone wall behind you. It is cool to the touch, solid and unmoving. A contrast to the softer textures around you. Your eyes drift towards the entrance again. The outside world is brighter now. The light has strengthened, casting clearer shapes across the ground. You can see others further out, moving slowly through the landscape, bending, lifting, walking. Each person absorbed in their own tasks. And yet connected. Evidence remains inconclusive on exactly how much specialization existed within these groups. Some argue that individuals may have developed particular skills over time, while others believe roles remained fluid, shifting based on need and circumstance. You think about that as you sit there. The idea of roles, of identity tied to a specific task. Here it feels less defined, more flexible. You are not only one thing. You gather, you shape, you observe, you learn. The fire beside you shifts slightly as a piece of material settles deeper into the embers. A small flame flickers upward, then steadies. Its light dances across the stone surfaces, creating faint patterns that move and change with each flicker. You reach out, extending your hand toward the warmth. Not too close, just enough to feel it. The heat is gentle, steady. It spreads slowly across your skin, easing the lingering coolness of the morning. You turn your hand, slightly feeling the difference as one side warms than the other. It is a simple sensation, but grounding. You withdraw your hand and rest it on your knee. For a moment you close your eyes, not to sleep but to feel. the sounds, the warmth, the steady presence of others. This is what fills the space before larger tasks begin. Not silence, not stillness, but a quiet preparation. And as you open your eyes again, you sense it. The day is moving forward, slowly, naturally, without needing to be pushed. You rise again after a quiet pause, leaving the tools where they rest, and step back out into the open air. The light has shifted further now, no longer soft grey or pale gold, but something clearer. The landscape feels more defined, as if each shape has settled into its place for the day. Your eyes adjust quickly. You can see others spread out across the land, moving at different distances, each following their own path. Some are closer, bending low to the ground. Others have moved farther away, their forms smaller against the wider horizon. You begin to walk, not in a hurry, not toward a fixed destination, but with a loose sense of direction. Your steps fall into a steady rhythm, guided by familiarity rather than thought. The ground changes subtly beneath you as you move. Patches of dry grass give way to softer soil, then to firmer, compacted earth. Archaeological findings indicate that gathering plant foods was a central part of early human survival, often providing a reliable and consistent source of nutrition. While hunting carried uncertainty, gathering offered steadiness, shaping daily movement and knowledge of the land. You slow as you approach a small cluster of low-growing plants. Their leaves are broader than the ones you handled earlier, with a slightly waxy surface that reflects the sunlight. You crouch, bringing yourself closer, your fingers hovering just above them. You do not pick immediately. Instead, you observe the colour, the spacing between the leaves, the condition of the surrounding ground. An often overlooked insight is that early humans developed a kind of environmental memory, recognizing not just individual plants but patterns, where certain plants grew when they were ready, how they changed over the time. You reach down and gently pull one free. The motion is smooth, practiced. The plant gives way with little resistance. You brush away a bit of soil, then set it aside. You continue. One plant, then another, each movement quiet and deliberate. Nearby, you hear the soft rustle of someone moving through the grass. You glance up and see another figure working in a similar way, their attention focused downward, their hands moving steadily. There is no competition here, no urgency to gather more than others, only the understanding that what you collect contributes to the group. You shift slightly, moving a few steps to the side where the ground dips gently. The soil here feels different, slightly cooler, slightly more damp. The plants are different too, thinner stems, narrower leaves. You hesitate. Not everything here is familiar. Some researchers suggest, while others disagree, on how early humans distinguished between edible and harmful plants in unfamiliar environments. Trial and error may have played a role, but observation and shared knowledge likely reduced risk over time. You decide to leave these plants untouched. A small decision again, but one shaped by caution. You stand and take a slow breath, letting your gaze travel further across the land. The openness stretches outward, broken only by seeds of small rises, scattered stones and distant clusters of trees. The sky above is clear, pale blue with no sign of clouds. The air carries a faint movement, a gentle breeze that brushes past your face and arms. You begin to walk again. This time your path curves slightly toward a lower area where the land seems to gather itself. You can see a faint line cutting through it, not sharp, but enough to suggest something different. As you approach, the air changes. Cooler, damp. The ground softens beneath your feet. Water. It is not a river in the way you might imagine, wide and fast-moving. Instead, it is a narrow stream winding quietly through the land. Its surface reflects the light in small shifting patterns. You step closer. The sound is subtle, almost hidden beneath the movement of the breeze. A gentle flow, steady and continuous. Evidence from multiple sites suggests that access to water was a key factor in where early humans chose to spend time. Even temporary stays often occurred near reliable sources of water, shaping patterns of movement and survival. You kneel at the edge of the stream. The water is clear, revealing small stones beneath the surface. You reach out, dipping your fingers in. It is cold, not sharply, but enough to feel immediate and real. You lift your hand, watching as droplets fall back, creating small ripples that spread outward and disappear. Nearby you notice small marks in the softer ground. Tracks. Not human. You lean slightly closer, studying them. the shape, the spacing, the depth. An interesting detail that often goes unnoticed is that early humans were highly skilled at reading tracks, using them to identify animals, estimate their size, and even determine how recently they had passed through an area. You trace one lightly with your finger, not altering it, just following its outline. It leads away from the water, disappearing into the grass beyond. You sit back considering. Water attracts more than just people. It draws animals, and where there are animals, there is both opportunity and risk. You rise again, stepping back from the edge. The ground here feels softer, your feet sinking slightly before finding balance again. You adjust naturally, shifting your weight as you move. A figure appears at the edge of your vision. They approach slowly, carrying a small bundle similar to yours. As they reach the stream, they kneel, without hesitation, dipping their hands into the water. There is no need for instruction. The action is understood. You watch as they lift the water to their mouth, drinking in small, controlled motions. Then they pause, looking briefly at the surface before standing again. There is a quiet awareness in the way they move, a recognition that this place is shared. You turn slightly, looking back toward the shelter. From here, it is less visible, partially hidden by the curve of the land, but you can still sense its presence, still know where it is. That connection remains, even at a distance. Experts continue to examine how early humans balanced movement and familiarity, often returning to known locations while also exploring new areas. This balance allowed them to adapt without losing the knowledge that kept them safe. You take one last look at the stream. Then slowly you begin to walk back, not because you must, but because the rhythm of the day draws you there. The bundle in your hand shifts slightly with each step. It is not heavy, but it carries meaning beyond its weight. It is part of something larger. As you move across the land once more, the light continues to rise, the air gradually warming, the sounds of activity growing just enough to signal that the day is unfolding. And you are moving within it, quietly, naturally, as it has always been. You walk back at an unhurried pace, the bundle of plants resting lightly in your hand, your steps guided more by memory than intention. The path is not marked yet, it feels familiar. The rise of the land, the scattered stones, the way the light falls across certain patches of ground. All of it forms a quiet map in your mind. As you approach the shelter, you begin to notice something subtle. The sounds, not just the movement of feet or the soft handling of objects, but the voices. They are more present now, not loud, not constant, but woven into the space in short, gentle bursts. A low tone here, a brief call there, a sound that rises slightly then fades. None of it forms structured sentences in the way you understand language today, and yet it carries meaning. You slow your steps as you draw closer. Two figures stand near the entrance facing each other. One lifts their hand, slightly fingers opening and closing in a small motion. The other responds with a short vocal sound, something between a hum and a word. There is a pause, then both shift their attention toward the ground nearby. Agreement again, achieved without complexity. Archaeological and linguistic studies indicate that by around 50,000 years ago, early humans likely had developed forms of spoken language, though the exact structure and richness of that language remain uncertain. What seems clear is that communication extended beyond sound alone, blending gesture, expression, and shared understanding. You step into the edge of the group's space, placing your bundle down among the others. No announcement, no explanation, just the act itself. A figure nearby glances at what you have gathered, then back at you. There is a slight change in their posture, a small nod almost imperceptible. Recognition, an often overlooked insight, is that much of early human communication may have relied on these small signals. Eye contact, posture, timing, the kinds of things that are easy to miss but powerful when understood. You sit down once more though, not in the same place as before. The position shifts naturally, depending on what you are doing, who is nearby, what the moment calls for. A few others gather closer to the fire. The flames are steady now, small but active. Thin pieces of dry material are added one at a time, each placed carefully rather than thrown. The fire responds in quiet ways. A slight increase in brightness, a gentle shift in the shape of the flame. You watch as one figure leans forward holding a piece of food near the heat. Not too close, just enough. The motion is slow controlled. You notice the way they turn it, occasionally ensuring it warms evenly. There is patience in this process. No rush to finish, no distraction pulling their attention away. A lesser-known detail reveals that cooking may have played a major role in human development, making food easier to digest and increasing the amount of energy the body could extract. This simple act repeated over countless generations may have shaped both physical and cognitive evolution. You lean slightly closer to the fire, feeling its warmth reach your hands again. The sensation is familiar now, comforting. You glance to your side. Another figure sits nearby, their hands empty for the moment. They watch the fire, then look toward you. Their expression is neutral calm. There is no urgency to fill the silence. And yet after a moment they make a small sound. It's not a word you recognize, but it is directed at you. You respond without thinking. A short sound of your own, slightly different in tone but similar in rhythm. The exchange is brief and complete. You might find yourself wondering what was just communicated. A greeting, perhaps. A simple acknowledgement. Something as small as noticing each other's presence. Experts continue to examine how early language developed, with some proposing that it began with simple sounds tied to immediate needs, while others suggest it may have included more abstract ideas earlier than we assume. The truth remains uncertain, but what you experience here feels functional, grounded in the moment. You shift your position, resting your hands on your knees. The ground beneath you has warmed slightly as the day progresses. Not by much, but enough to feel different from the coolness of the early morning. Outside movement continues. You can see figures passing by the entrance, their silhouettes briefly crossing the light before disappearing again into the open land. Movement adds to the quiet rhythm of the day. You listen more closely now, to the voices, to the patterns. There is repetition in certain sounds, slight variations in others, a rising tone that seems to call attention, a lower tone that feels more like confirmation. It is not random. It is shaped. Some researchers suggest, while others disagree on whether early human language included structured grammar at this stage or if it remained more fluid and situational. What you hear does not feel rigid. It adapts. It responds. It fits the moment. You notice a gesture across the space. A figure points toward a small pile of gathered materials, then makes a short sound. Another responds, moving toward the pile and picking something up. Coordination, achieved with very little. You think briefly of how much modern life depends on precise language, detailed instructions, complex explanations, written systems that preserve meaning across time and distance. Here meaning is immediate, shared in the moment, understood through context as much as sound. You lower your gaze to the ground in front of you. Small marks have been left in the dirt. Not intentional patterns, just the result of movement. Hands, tools, feet shifting and pressing. They form a kind of quiet record of activity, visible only for a short time before they are disturbed again. Nothing here is meant to last, and yet everything contributes. The fire crackles softly beside you. A piece of material shifts, sending a brief spark upward before it fades. The smoke rises in a thin line, then spreads, blending into the air above. You take a slow breath. The scent of smoke mixes with the natural smells of the environment. Earth, plant matter, warm stone. It feels complete. You sit there for a while longer, not speaking, not moving much, just observing the flow of communication around you. The sounds, the gestures, the quiet exchanges that keep the group connected. There is no need to understand every detail. You are already part of it. And as the morning continues to unfold, the space fills not with noise but with meaning, carried in the simplest of ways. You remain near the fire, your body settled into a comfortable stillness, while the quiet patterns of the group continue around you. The voices rise and fall in short, gentle sounds, and the movements remain unhurried. Nothing feels forced. Nothing feels rushed. After some time, your attention begins to drift again. Not outward this time, but inward towards the subtle exchanges happening closer to the center of the group. A few figures have gathered slightly apart from the others, not in a formal circle, but close enough that their presence creates a small focal point. You notice the way they sit, their bodies angled inward, their attention shared. You shift to your position just slightly enough to observe without interrupting. One of them lifts their hand and begins to move it slowly through the air. The motion is deliberate, almost careful, as if tracing something unseen. Their fingers curl and extend their arm, rising and falling in a quiet rhythm. Then comes a sound. Soft, measured, repeated. It is not quite speech as you know it, but it carries a pattern, a sequence, something that holds attention. You listen. So do the others. Findings from early human communities suggest that long before writing, knowledge was carried through memory and shared through repeated forms of communication. These could include spoken patterns, gestures, or even rhythmic sounds that made information easier to remember. The figure continues. Their movements shift now, becoming slightly more animated. A small tilt of the head, a pause at just the right moment, a change in tone that draws the group's attention more closely. You begin to sense it. This is not random. This is telling. A small but revealing observation is that storytelling may have been one of the earliest ways humans preserved important knowledge. Not just events, but lessons. Where to go, what to avoid, what has happened before. You watch as another figure responds, not with interruption, but with a brief sound at a certain point, almost like a marker, a shared signal that something has been recognized or understood. The exchange continues. There are pauses, moments where nothing is said, but the silence itself feels meaningful. Then the sounds begin again, carrying the flow forward. You notice how your own attention has settled. You're not trying to translate each sound into meaning. You're simply following the rhythm, the pacing, the rise and fall. It's calming in a way that feels familiar, even though the form is different. You might think of stories told in the evening long after the day's work is done. The slow voice of someone speaking, the way it fills the space, the way it holds your focus without effort. Here the same feeling exists, but without structured language. Evidence from archaeological discoveries confirms that symbolic thinking and shared meaning existed long before written systems. Objects, markings, and repeated behaviors all point to a capacity for abstract thought, something deeper than immediate survival. The figure pauses. Their hand lowers. There is a moment of a stillness. Then another voice joins in, softer, shorter, a continuation or perhaps a response. It's difficult to tell where one begins and the other ends. The flow is shared. You shift slightly, adjusting your posture. The ground beneath you feels warmer now, the morning fully settled. The fire continues to burn steadily, its light less noticeable in the growing daylight, but its presence still central. You glance around. Others nearby are listening too, though not all in the same way. Some continue their tasks, their hands moving, as their attention drifts in and out of the shared moment. Others sit more still, their focus held completely. There is no demand to listen, no expectation, and yet the story continues. Some experts lean toward the idea that storytelling played a key role in strengthening social bonds within early human groups. Others remain unconvinced, suggesting that its role may have been more practical, tied directly to survival. Perhaps it was both. You watch the expressions, subtle changes, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a faint shift in posture, small signs that something is being felt, understood, remembered. This is not just communication, it is connection. You find yourself leaning in, slightly drawn closer without realizing it. The sounds begin to slow. The gestures become one smaller. The sequence reaches a natural end. No clear signal marks it. It simply fades. The group remains for a moment, sitting in that shared quiet. Then gradually movement resumes. Someone stands. Another reaches for a tool. The space opens again, returning to its earlier rhythm. But something has settled, a layer added to the day. A subtle clue comes from moments like this. The ability to share information, to hold attention, to create a shared experience. These are not small things. They form the foundation of something much larger. You sit back, letting your body relax again. The fire crackles softly beside you. A faint breeze moves through the entrance, carrying the scent of the outside world into the shelter. Grass, soil, warm air. You take a slow breath, and for a moment you simply exist within it. No need to act. No need to decide. Just the quiet awareness of being part of something that moves gently, steadily forward. And as the sounds of the group blend once more into the background, you realize that this too is part of survival. Not just food. Not just tools, but memory, shared, carried, and passed on one moment at a time. The quiet moment fades naturally, not ending, so much as blending back into the steady movement of the day. You shift your weight forward and rise once more, your body already anticipating what comes next. There is a subtle change in the air around the group. It is not tension, not urgency, but a kind of readiness, a slight sharpening of attention. Movements become more deliberate. Glances travel further across the land, not just downward at plants or tools, but outward scanning. You notice it in yourself as well. Your gaze lifts more often now, your ears tuning to sounds beyond the immediate space. Hunting, it is not announced, but it is understood. You step away from the shelter following a small group that has begun to move together. Their pace is slow at first measured. No one rushes ahead, no one lags too far behind. You fall into place among them. Not at the front, not at the back, just within. A line forms, though loosely. Each person spaced enough to move freely, but close enough to remain connected. The ground beneath your feet shifts again as you leave the familiar area near the shelter, becoming slightly rougher, scattered with more stones and uneven patches. Evidence from prehistoric sites suggests that hunting required coordination and patience rather than speed alone. Early humans often relied on tracking persistence and knowledge of animal behavior to succeed. You move quietly, not silent but careful. Your steps are lighter now, placed with more attention. You avoid loose stones when you can. You adjust your path around thicker patches of grass. Ahead, one of the figures raises a hand slightly. The movement is small, but it carries meaning. You slow immediately. The group responds as one, the pace easing almost at the same moment. No words are spoken, none are needed. A lesser-known detail is that early hunters likely relied heavily on non-verbal communication during hunts, using gestures and subtle signals to coordinate movement without alerting animals nearby. You feel your breathing, steady, controlled. The air seems different here, carrying new scents. Faint but noticeable. Earth still. Plant still, but something else layered within it. You cannot name it directly, but you recognize that it does not belong to you. You continue forward. The land dips slightly, forming a shallow depression. The grass here is taller, brushing lightly against your legs as you pass through. Each movement creates a soft rustling sound, barely audible but present. You slow further. Every sound matters now. What makes this interesting is that hunting in this time was rarely guaranteed. Success depended on many factors: the condition of the animal, the terrain, the wind. Even small missteps could change the outcome. You notice the wind. It moves gently across your face, carrying air from one direction to another. You adjust your position slightly, aligning your path with the group in a way that feels instinctive. You are not thinking about it in words, but your body understands. Ahead, another signal. A slight crouch. You follow. Your knees bend, your center of gravity lowering. The movement is quiet, controlled. You place your hands lightly against the ground for balance, feeling the texture of the soil beneath your fingers. Cool, slightly damp. You remain still for a moment, listening. The world narrows. The distant sounds fade, replaced by the immediate. The movement of grass, the faint shift of air, the almost imperceptible presence of something ahead. Some experts lean toward the idea that early humans developed a heightened sensitivity to environmental cues during hunting, allowing them to detect subtle changes that others might miss. Others remain uncertain about how much of this was learned versus instinctive. You lift your head slightly, and then you see it, not clearly at first, just a shape, a movement within the grass, small. Careful! It shifts again, revealing more of itself. The outline becomes clearer. An animal moving slowly, unaware of your presence. You feel a change in your body. Not excitement, not fear. Something quieter. Focus. The group remains still. No sudden movements. No sounds. Time stretches. Each second feels longer. Not because it is, but because of the attention placed within it. You notice your hands, the slight tension in your fingers, the readiness. Nearby, one of the figures adjusts their position, just slightly aligning their body with the direction of the animal. Another shifts their weight, preparing. Everything happens in small increments, nothing wasted. A subtle clue comes from how much patience is required here. Hunting is not about quick action, it is about waiting, observing, choosing the right moment. You feel your breathing again. You slow it. Inhale, Exhale. Quiet. The animal moves a little closer, stepping into a clearer patch. Its head lowers briefly, then lifts again. It pauses. You do not move. No one does. There is a shared stillness now connecting each person in the group, silent agreement to hold this moment. Evidence remains inconclusive on how often hunts like this succeeded. Some likely ended without capture, requiring groups to try again and again. Persistence rather than immediate success may have been the defining trait. The moment builds. Not quickly, but steadily. You feel it, the shift approaching, and just as it begins to form, just as the stillness reaches its peak, you sense the group preparing, not yet moving, but ready, balanced at the edge of action. And you remain there with them, waiting. You remain in that held stillness, your body balanced low to the ground, your attention fixed on the faint movement ahead. The animal shifts again, stepping slowly through the grass, unaware of the quiet line of watchers nearby. No one rushes. No one breaks the moment. Time seems to stretch, not because it has changed, but because everything within you has slowed to match it. Your breathing remains steady, your muscles engaged but not tense. Then gently the moment begins to dissolve. The animal lifts its head, pauses, then turns slightly away. It takes a few steps, moving into thicker grass where its shape becomes less distinct. The opportunity narrows, then fades. No one reacts. It's with the frustration. No sudden movement follows. The group remains still for a few seconds longer, as if allowing the moment to pass fully before letting it go. Then gradually bodies begin to rise. The crouched forms lift, one at a time, returning to a standing position. The transition is quite controlled. There is no sense of failure, only continuation. A widely supported interpretation of prehistoric life suggests that not every hunt resulted in success, and that early humans relied on persistence rather than expectation. Missing an opportunity was part of the process, not an interruption of it. You stand as well, brushing your hands lightly against your legs. The grass sways gently again, no longer held still by your presence. The breeze moves through it, restoring the natural rhythm of the landscape. A figure near the front glances back briefly, not to signal anything specific, but to acknowledge the group. Then they turn and begin to walk not toward the animal, but along a slightly different path. You follow! The formation loosens now. The tight focus of the hunt softens into a more open movement. Some walk closer together, others drift a little farther apart. The tension has eased. A less known observation is that early human hunting strategies often included flexibility, shifting from direct pursuit to tracking or returning to other activities depending on conditions. This adaptability allowed groups to conserve energy and reduce risk. You step over a small patch of uneven ground, your foot landing carefully between two stones. The attention you used moments ago does not disappear. It simply changes shape, from stillness to movement, from focus to awareness. You glance down and notice the ground more clearly now. Small impressions, faint lines, slight disturbances in the soil and grass. Tracks. You slow slightly, letting your gaze follow them. They are not as clear as those near the water earlier, but they are there. Subtle, partial, a shift in the direction of grass, a small indentation where a hoof may have pressed. You crouch again this time without the same urgency, just observation. Another possibility often considered is that tracking played a major role in hunting success, allowing early humans to follow animals over longer distances, rather than relying only on close encounters. You trace one of the marks lightly with your fingers, feeling the difference in texture. Then you stand again, continuing forward. The group spreads slightly as the land opens. The tall grass gives way to a more varied surface. Patches of bare soil, clusters of low plants, occasional stones that rise just enough to change your path. The sun has risen higher now. Its warmth is more noticeable, touching your shoulders, your back, your arms. The coolness of the early morning has faded into something softer. You take a slow breath. The air feels different again, warmer, fuller. You notice a figure off to your right moving at a slightly different pace. They stop, occasionally bending down to examine something, then moving on again. Not hunting, tracking. You watch for a moment, then continue. There is no single direction that everyone must follow. The group remains connected but not fixed in place. Movement flows naturally, adjusting to what the land offers. Evidence from early human migration patterns suggests that groups often moved in response to multiple factors at once: food sources, water availability, seasonal changes. No single path defined their journey. You feel this now. The sense that movement is not random but not rigid either. It adapts. You walk a little further, then pause as you reach a slight rise in the land. From here, the view expands. You can see further across the landscape, gentle curves of the terrain, the scattered vegetation, the distant line where land meets sky, and within it small movements, animals, far off, not close enough to approach now, but visible enough to note. You stand quietly observing. A small but revealing detail is that early humans likely spent significant time simply watching animals from a distance, learning their patterns, their habits, their movements across the land. You watch as one of the distant shapes moves slowly across the open space, then disappears behind a rise. There is no immediate reaction, no decision to follow, just awareness. You lower your gaze and turn back toward the group. Some have continued forward, others remain behind, still scanning the ground, still following the faint signs that may or may not lead anywhere. You begin to walk again, rejoining the loose pattern of movement. The day continues, not defined by single success or failure, but by a series of small actions, each one contributing in its own way. You feel the steadiness of it, the lack of pressure, the quiet understanding that what matters is not a single moment but the continuation of many. And as you move with the group across the land, the earlier stillness of the hunt settles into something else, a broader awareness, a rhythm that does not depend on outcome, only on presence. You continue walking with the group, your pace steady, your steps guided by the gentle rise and fall of the land. The earlier focus of the hunt has softened into something broader now, a quieter awareness that stretches across everything you see. The ground slopes gradually downward again, though. This time the change feels more gradual, more open. You notice how the vegetation shifts with it. The grass is thinned slightly, giving way to patches of bare soil and small clusters of plants that seem to favour this lower ground. The air carries a different quality here, not just warmth but a faint sense of moisture. You recognise it before you see it. Water shapes this pace. You move forward, your attention drawn toward a wider stretch of land where the surface darkens slightly. The soil here looks richer, softer, holding on to something the higher ground does not. Soon the sound reaches you, not loud, not rushing, but present, a gentle, continuous flow. You step closer and the land opens to reveal a broader stream than the one you visited earlier. It winds slowly through the terrain, its surface catching the light in small shifting patterns that ripple outward and fade. You pause at the edge. The water moves steadily, not fast enough to demand caution, but not still either. It carries with it small bits of debris, leaves fragments of plant stems, tiny pieces of the world upstream. Evidence uncovered at ancient sites suggests that early human groups often stayed near water sources like this, not only for drinking but for food materials and movement across the landscape. Water was not just a resource, it was a guide. You kneel, placing your hand lightly into the stream. The coolness is immediate, spreading across your skin, grounding you in the moment. You let your fingers rest there for a few seconds, feeling the current move around them steady and consistent. Then you lift your hand, watching as the droplets fall back, merging again with the surface. Nearby others begin to gather, not all at once, but gradually, each arriving from a slightly different direction. Some kneel as you did. Others stand scanning the area, their eyes moving between the water and the land beyond it. You notice the ground more carefully now. There are more tracks here, not just one or two, but many. Overlapping, crossing, fading into one another. A small but meaningful clue comes from places like this. Water draws life. Animals come here to drink, to rest, to pass through. And where animals gather, patterns begin to form. You crouch lower, studying the ground. Some tracks are deeper, pressed firmly into the damp soil. Others are lighter, barely visible unless you look closely. You trace one with your finger, feeling the indentation. Fresh. Or at least not old. You glance up, scanning the area again. Nothing moves nearby, but that does not mean nothing is here. Not all experts agree on how early humans interpreted these signs in real time. Some believe they could estimate how recently an animal had passed, while others suggest that this level of precision may have varied between groups. What you feel standing here is not certainty but awareness. You rise slowly. The group does not rush. There is no sudden shift back into hunting. Instead, the moment is absorbed, considered, then allowed to settle. A figure steps into the shallow edge of the stream, their feet disturbing the surface slightly. The water ripples outward, distorting the reflections for a moment before smoothing again. They bend down, reaching beneath the surface. You watch. Their hand moves slowly, feeling along the bottom, searching. Then after a moment, they lift something small. Not large, not immediately clear, but enough. A subtle pattern emerges when researchers compare findings from different sites. Water sources were not only used for drinking, but also for gathering small aquatic foods such as fish or shellfish when available. These resources added variety to early diets, even if they were not always the primary focus. The figure examines what they have found briefly, then carries it back toward the edge. You step slightly to the side, making space without needing to think about it. The group shifts gently around one another, movements overlapping without collision, each person adjusting in small ways. You look across the stream. The land rises again on the other side, forming a soft boundary that guides the flow of water. Beyond it, the terrain continues stretching outward in the same quiet patterns. You might think of modern maps. Clear lines, defined borders. Here nothing is marked, and yet everything is understood. Another perspective considers that early humans built mental maps of their environment not as fixed representations, but as living knowledge that adapted over time. Landmarks, water sources, seasonal changes, all remembered, all connected. You take a slow breath. The air here feels richer, carrying the scent of water, of damp soil, of life gathered in one place. You step back from the edge, giving the space room again. Others continue their quiet work. Some drink, some observe, some simply stand, letting the moment pass. There is no single purpose here, only many small ones. You turn slightly, looking back the way you came. The shelter is no longer visible, hidden behind the rise of the land. But you do not feel lost. The path remains in your mind, shaped by memory and movement rather than sight. You begin to walk again, not away from the water entirely, but along it, following its curve. The ground beside it offers easier passage in places, the soil more compact, the path more open. As you move, you listen. To the water, to the faint sounds of others nearby, to the quiet rhythm of your own steps. The day continues to unfold, not in sudden changes, but in steady transitions, from one place to another, from one task to the next, and you move within it, guided not by urgency, but by the quiet pull of what is needed. You follow the gentle curve of the water for a while, your steps falling into an easy rhythm as the stream moves beside you. The sound remains soft and constant, a quiet companion that neither demands attention nor disappears completely. After some time, the ground begins to change again. The soil becomes less damp, firmer beneath your feet. The plants shift in shape and density, growing lower in some places, thicker in others. The path you follow becomes less defined, blending gradually back into the wider landscape. You slow slightly, lifting your gaze. Ahead you notice something different. Not a cave, not a rock, overhang like the shelter you left earlier, but a structure. Subtle at first, almost blending into the land until you look more closely. A frame of branches, leaning, curved. You step closer. It is simple. A few longer branches form the base angle toward one another. Smaller pieces are layered across them, creating a partial covering. Dried grasses and leaves have been placed along the outer surface, not fully sealing it, but enough to break the wind to soften the space within. You pause just outside it. This is not a permanent home, but it is not nothing either. Careful study of early human sites reveals that while caves and rock shelters were often used when available, people also created temporary structures like this when needed. These could be built quickly using materials from the surrounding area, offering protection without requiring long-term settlement. You reach out and touch one of the branches. It is dry, slightly rough, but stable. It bends just enough to absorb pressure without breaking. The placement is not exact, but it holds. You step around it slowly, observing from different angles. The opening faces away from the direction of the wind, a small but important choice. The ground inside looks slightly cleared, as if repeated use has pressed it down, smoothing out the unevenness. A small but meaningful clue comes from arrangements like this. Even without permanent buildings, early humans shaped their environment in subtle ways, creating spaces that offered comfort and function. You crouch and lean slightly into the opening. The air inside feels different, still, less exposed. You sit for a moment just inside the edge. The space is small but enough to rest, enough to wait, enough to sleep if needed. You run your hand along the ground. It is smoother here, packed down from use. A few scattered fragments of plant material remain perhaps from earlier gatherings or bedding. You imagine the structure being built, not in a single effort but gradually. One branch placed, then another. Adjustments made, materials added, removed, replaced. There is no blueprint, only understanding. One detail that rarely draws attention is that these temporary shelters may have been reused over time, repaired when needed, or abandoned when conditions changed. Flexibility was more valuable than permanence. You step back out into the open. The light feels brighter after the shaded interior. You blink once, letting your eyes adjust again. Nearby, another similar structure sits at a slight distance. Smaller, less intact, its branches partially collapsed. The grasses have thinned, leaving gaps where the wind can pass through more easily. Time affects everything here. Nothing remains untouched. You walk toward it, your steps slower now, more reflective. You reach out and lift one of the fallen branches. It's lighter than it looks. You turn it slightly, noticing where it may have once rested against another piece. You set it back down gently. There is no attempt to repair it. Not now. Perhaps not ever. Looking more closely, you can see that not all structures are meant to last. Some serve their purpose for a short time, then return to the land. You stand between the two shelters for a moment, one still intact, one beginning to fade. A quiet contrast. There is still uncertainty surrounding how often early humans relied on constructed shelters compared to natural ones. The availability of caves, the climate, the movement of groups. All of these factors shaped how and where people created temporary homes. You take a slow breath. The air here feels slightly warmer than before, less influenced by the water you followed earlier. The breeze moves more freely, brushing across your arms and face. You look back toward the direction of the group. Some figures are visible in the distance, moving along different paths, continuing their tasks. Others are closer, passing through the area, their presence brief but familiar. You're not alone, even here. You step away from the structures and continue walking. The land rises gently again, guiding your movement upward. The ground becomes firmer, the plants shorter, the view opening wider as you gain a little height. From here, you can see more clearly the path of the stream behind you, the scattered movement of the group, the subtle marks left by repeated travel. Another perspective considers that early humans did not divide their world into separate places the way we often do today. Shelter, food, movement, rest. These were not isolated activities, but part of a continuous flow shaped by the environment. You feel that flow now, the way each place connects to the next, the way each action leads naturally into another. You pause at the top of the rise. The wind is slightly stronger here, carrying the scent of dry grass and warm earth. It moves through your hair, across your skin, a constant presence that you barely notice until you stop. You turn once more, taking in the view. Then slowly you begin to move again, leaving the small shelters behind, carrying with you the quiet understanding that even in a world without walls or permanence, people still shaped spaces for themselves. Small, temporary, but enough. You continue over the gentle rise, your steps steady as the ground evens out beneath you. The breeze moves more freely here, brushing across your shoulders, carrying with it the scent of dry grass and warmed earth. The sun sits higher now, its presence no longer subtle. It rests against your skin in a way that feels constant but not overwhelming. As you walk, your attention shifts again, this time not to the land ahead but to yourself, or more precisely to what you wear. It's easy to overlook at first. There is no sharp contrast and no bright colour to draw your eye. But as you move, you begin to feel it more clearly. The texture, the weight, the way it sits against your body. You reach up, brushing your fingers along your shoulder. The material feels firm yet flexible. It shifts with your movement, neither clinging too tightly nor hanging too loose. The surface is uneven, shaped by its origin rather than refined into uniformity. Animal hide, prepared but not altered beyond recognition. Findings from early human remains suggest that clothing made from animal skins and plant fibers played a crucial role in survival, particularly in colder climates. These materials provided insulation and protection, allowing humans to move into regions that would otherwise have been too harsh. You adjust the edge slightly, pulling it more securely across your upper body. The motion feels familiar, not something you think about often, but something your hands understand. You notice how the material warms gradually where it rests against your skin. Not immediately, but over time, holding on to the heat your body creates. It is not perfect, but it is enough. A small but meaningful clue comes from the way these materials are used. They are not simply worn. They are adapted, adjusted, positioned depending on the need. You glance down at your legs. The covering there is simpler. Wrapped, secured in place with a strip of fibre or sinew. It allows movement without restriction. You can walk crouch step over uneven ground without resistance. Practical, always practical. One detail that rarely draws attention is that early clothing was likely multifunctional. A hide might serve as a covering during movement, then be used as bedding at night or as a barrier against wind when resting. Objects were not specialized in the way they often are today. You slow your pace slightly, becoming more aware of the sensations. The breeze passes across your arms, but the areas covered by hide remain warmer. The difference is subtle but noticeable. You turn slightly into the wind, feeling how the material blocks some of its force. Protection, simple but effective. You reach down and brush your hand along the lower edge of the hide. It's worn in places, the surface smoother where it has been handled repeatedly. Other areas remain rougher, less softened by use. Time leaves marks here too. Looking more closely, you begin to notice others. The way their clothing differs slightly. Some wear thicker layers, others have lighter coverings. Some have added small pieces tied or wrapped in ways that reflect personal adjustment rather than strict design. There is no uniformity, only variation within shared understanding. Not all experts agree on how early clothing was produced or distributed within groups. Some believe individuals crafted and maintained their own materials, while others suggest a more shared approach with knowledge and resources moving between members. You walk past another figure who pauses, briefly adjusting a strip of fibre at their waist. Their movements are quick, practiced. A small correction, then they continue on without hesitation. Nothing here is fixed. Everything can be changed. You reach a patch of ground where the soil feels warmer beneath your feet, having absorbed more sunlight. You pause for a moment, letting your body settle into the warmth. The sun presses gently against your back. The hide holds some of that heat close. You take a slow breath. There is a quiet comfort in this balance. Not too warm, not too cold. Just enough. You might think of modern clothing designed for specific conditions, manufactured with precision, layered for exact comfort. Here the approach is different. Less exact, but deeply connected to the environment. You adjust your shoulders again, feeling how the material shifts, how it responds to your movement rather than resisting it. It becomes part of you, not separate. Another perspective considers that clothing may also have carried social meaning, not just practical use. Small variations in how materials were worn could signal identity, experience, or role within the group. These differences may have been subtle but still understood. You glance around. The group continues to move, each person carrying their own variation of the same basic need. Protection from the elements, adaptation to the day. You step forward again, your pace steady. The land stretches out ahead, open and familiar in its quiet way. The sun continues its slow rise, the air warming gradually, the breeze shifting as it moves across the terrain. You feel your body settle into the rhythm of it, the movement, the temperature, the texture of what you wear, everything working together. You take another breath, deeper this time, and continue. You continue walking across the open ground, your steps steady, your body settling into the warmth of the late morning. The sun now rests higher in the sky, its light more direct, though still gentle enough to feel comfortable. The breeze moves less frequently, and when it does, it carries a softness rather than a chill. As you move, your attention shifts once again, not to a single object or task, but to the people around you. The group is more spread out now than earlier, but not disconnected. Each person moves within a certain distance, close enough to see, to hear, to sense. The space between you all feels intentional, even if no one has decided it consciously. You notice how often paths cross, not in a planned way, but naturally. Someone moving from one patch of land meets another, returning from a different direction. They pause briefly, a glance, a small sound, then they continue. These moments are short, but frequent. Evidence suggests that early human survival depended heavily on cooperation, even in small everyday actions. Sharing information, resources, and attention allowed groups to function more effectively than individuals alone. You slow slightly as you approach a pair of figures working close to one another. One kneels sorting through a small collection of gathered plants. The other stands nearby holding a tool, occasionally stepping forward to assist. There is no clear division of roles, no rigid assignment. And yet the work is shared. A closer look reveals that cooperation here does not require instruction. It flows through observation. One sees what is needed and responds, not perfectly, not always at the same time, but often enough to matter. You watch for a moment as the kneeling figure pauses, lifting one plant, slightly examining it. The standing figure leans in, glances briefly, then makes a small sound. Agreement. The plant is added to the pile. You continue walking. A little further on you see another interaction. This one quieter, almost easy to miss. A figure carrying a bundle shifts it from one arm to the other. As they do, a smaller piece slips loose and falls to the ground. Before they even notice, as someone nearby steps forward, picks it up and places it back into the bundle. No words, no pause, just a small correction. Something quite fascinating here is how these actions happen without acknowledgement in the way you might expect. There is no need to say thank you, no visible recognition. The act itself is enough. You move past them, your steps carrying you toward a slightly more open patch of land. The ground here is smoother, less cluttered with plants or stones. A few figures sit or crouch, resting briefly, their bodies angled toward the sun. Others stand nearby, shifting their weight, adjusting their posture. Rest is part of the rhythm too, not separate from work. You pause at the edge of this space, letting yourself slow. The warmth of the sun settles more fully across your shoulders now. The hide you wear holds some of that warmth, softening the contrast between light and air. You feel your muscles ease slightly, the tension of movement releasing without effort. You lower yourself to the ground. The soil is warm beneath you, carrying the heat it has gathered over time. You rest your hands on your knees, your gaze drifting across the group. There is no stillness here, but there is calm. Small movements continue. Someone adjusts a tool, another brushes dirt from their hands. A third leans back slightly. Their posture relaxed but not fully at rest. A detail that often goes unnoticed is that cooperation does not always look like shared labour. Sometimes it appears in shared space, in the simple act of being present together without conflict or tension. You watch as a furrow nearby shifts closer to a buffet, not directly facing them, not interrupting, but closing the distance slightly. The two sit side by side, their shoulders angled outward, their attention on the space ahead rather than on each other. Connection does not always require direct focus. Sometimes it exists in proximity. Experts have proposed different ideas about how early human social bonds formed and strengthened. Some suggest that shared tasks played the primary role, while others point to quieter moments like this, where presence itself builds familiarity. You lean back slightly, placing one hand behind you for support. The sky above is clear, the light steady. There are no sudden changes, no interruptions to the flow of the day. Everything moves at a pace that feels natural, unforced. You might think of modern life again. The constant movement, the urgency, the need to fill every moment with purpose or activity. Here purpose exists, but it does not press. It does not demand. It unfolds. You close your eyes for a brief moment, not to sleep but to feel. The warmth of the ground, the air moving lightly across your skin, the faint sounds of others nearby. When you open them again, nothing has changed dramatically, and that is the point. A subtle insight is that stability in early human life may not have come from control, but from consistency, the repetition of small actions, the predictability of shared behavior, the quiet reliability of the group. You shift forward again, preparing to stand. Your body responds easily, lifting without strain. You brush your hands lightly against your legs, clearing the dust that has settled there. Around you, the group continues. No one signals a return to activity. No one needs to. The movement resumes naturally just as it paused. You take a step forward, rejoining the flow. The bonds that hold this group together are not spoken, not written, but they are present in every glance, in every small action, in every quiet moment shared between you. You move forward again, leaving the warm patch of ground behind your steps steady as the group begins to spread out once more. The rhythm continues without interruption, each person drifting into their own small path while still remaining part of the whole. As you walk, your attention is drawn to a quieter part of the group, not because it is still, but because of the way movement gathers there. Slower, more careful, less frequent. You approach without urgency. A few figures sit close together, their posture slightly different from the others. Their movements are gentler, more measured. One leans forward holding something small in their hands. Another sits beside them watching closely. Between them a child, small, curled slightly but not in discomfort, simply resting. You slow your steps, then stop a short distance away. The space feels different here. Softer! You lower yourself to the ground, not too close but near enough to observe without disturbing the quiet balance of the moment. The child shifts slightly, making a small sound, not loud, not distressed, just a brief expression of movement. The figure holding them adjusts immediately, repositioning their hands, supporting the small body with ease. Looking at early human remains, we can see evidence that individuals who were injured or unable to fully care for themselves often survived longer than expected. This suggests that care within the group played a significant role in survival extending beyond simple self-sufficiency. You watch the movement carefully. The hands are steady, experienced. There is no hesitation. A detail that often goes unnoticed is how much knowledge exists in these small actions. The way the body is held, the way weight is shifted, the way comfort is provided without words. Another figure nearby leans closer, reaching out to adjust a piece of hide wrapped around the child. The motion is slow, careful not to startle. The material is pulled slightly tighter, then smoothed down. Protection, warmth, security. The child settles again. The sound fades. You feel the quiet deepen around you. No one speaks. No one rushes. The moment is allowed to unfold at its own pace. It's believed that human social groups develop strong caregiving behaviors early in their evolution, supporting not only children but also older individuals and those who are ill or injured. This kind of care may have strengthened group cohesion and increased overall survival. You shift slightly, adjusting your position on the ground. The soil here feels softer, more disturbed by repeated use. It holds the shape of bodies that have sat here before, rested here, spent time here. This place is used often, not marked, but known. You glance to your left. An older figure sits nearby, their movements slower, their posture more relaxed. They do not participate directly in the care, but their presence is steady. Their gaze moves between the others, observing, aware. Some researchers think this kind of presence carried its own importance. Even without constant physical activity, older members of the group may have contributed through knowledge, memory, and quiet guidance. Then their hand returns to rest. No instruction given, none needed. You begin to notice how many small actions overlap in this space. One figure holds, another adjusts, another observes. Each movement connects to the others. Nothing stands alone. A closer look reveals that care is not assigned to a single individual. It moves between people shared as naturally as any other task. You take a slow breath. The air here feels warmer, not because of the sun alone, but because of the closeness of bodies. The shared space holds heat, holds stillness, holds attention. You might think of modern life again. The way care is often structured, scheduled, separated into defined roles. Here it is different, less defined, more immediate. More fluid. The child stirs again this time, lifting slightly, then settling back. The figure holding them shifts position once more, supporting the movement without effort. You notice how natural it feels, not learned in a formal sense, but practiced, repeated, absorbed over time. There is still ongoing discussion about how early humans balanced caregiving with the demands of survival. Supporting vulnerable members required time and energy, yet evidence suggests it was done consistently enough to shape the way groups functioned. You glance around the wider group. Movement continues. People gather, people walk, people work, and here within that flow this quieter space remains. Not separate, but integrated. You rest your hands lightly on your knees, letting your shoulders relax. There is no need to move yet. No need to return immediately to the broader rhythm. You are part of this moment now, a shared pause within the larger day. The older figure shifts slightly, their gaze moving towards you for a brief second. There is no question in it, no expectation, just awareness. You return the glance, then look back toward the child. Everything remains steady, balanced, held. And as the group continues its quiet work around you, you begin to understand that survival here is not only about strength or skill, it is also about care. Given, shared, and carried forward one small moment at a time, you remain there for a while longer, letting the quiet presence of that small circle settle into you. The child rests more easily now, their movements softer, less frequent. The figures around them begin to shift again, not all at once, but gradually as the moment loosens its hold. One stands and steps away. Another adjusts their position, turning slightly toward the open land. The space changes, not disappearing, just unfolding back into the wider rhythm. You rise slowly, your body adjusting without strain, and take a few steps away from the group. The warmth lingers behind you, replaced by the open air once more. The sun sits higher now, its light clearer, its presence more constant. As you move, your attention drifts towards something less visible. Not objects, not tasks, but patterns, subtle ones. You notice how certain actions repeat. The way people pause at specific places, the way movement gathers, then disperses, then gathers again. There is a structure here, but it is not rigid. It shifts, adapts. You walk toward a slightly raised area of ground where a few figures have gathered again. Not working, not resting fully, just present. One of them holds something in their hand. Small, dark. You step closer. It is a piece of stone, but not shaped into a tool. Its surface carries markings. Lines perhaps, or patterns formed by repeated contact. The figure turns it slightly, letting the light catch it. You feel a quiet curiosity. They lift it higher, then lower it again, their fingers tracing along the surface. No immediate purpose is clear, and yet attention is given. Evidence uncovered in ancient sites suggests that early humans engaged in symbolic behavior long before written language existed. Objects with marking, pigments, and arrangements hint at meanings that go beyond simple function. You watch as another figure leans closer, their gaze fixed on the object. They do not reach for it. They simply observe. A small but meaningful clue comes from moments like this. Not every action is tied directly to survival. Some carry something else, a sense of attention, of focus, of shared interest. The figure holding the object makes a soft sound, not directed at anyone in particular, but enough to draw awareness. Others nearby shift slightly, their bodies angling toward the center. The space tightens, not physically but in attention. You feel it too, the pull inward. The object is passed to another, carefully, without haste. They hold it in a similar way, turning it slowly, tracing the same lines. A detail that often goes unnoticed is that early symbolic objects were not always elaborate. Even simple markings could carry significance, whether for memory, identity, or something more abstract. You wonder what it means, but the question does not press. It simply exists. The group remains quiet. No clear explanation is given. None is needed. Some researchers think this kind of behavior reflects early forms of belief or shared meaning, while others take a more cautious view, suggesting that not all markings carried symbolic intent. The evidence leaves room for interpretation. You watch as the object moves again, passing from one set of hands to another. Each person handles it slightly differently, but the care remains consistent. You begin to notice something else. A small patch of ground nearby, slightly darker than the surrounding soil. As you step closer, you see faint traces of colour. Not strong, not bright, but present. Red. Muted. You crouch down, bringing your hand near the surface without touching it. Pigment. Earth mixed with something else. Looking more closely, you can see faint smudges, as if it has been handled, applied, perhaps even used for marking. A closer look reveals that pigments like ochre were used by early humans for various purposes, including body decoration, object marking, and possibly ritual activities. The exact meanings remain uncertain, but their presence appears consistently across different regions. You lift your gaze again. The figures around you remain focused, not intensely, but with a quiet steadiness. The moment feels different from others, not tied to immediate immediate need. Not driven by task, it holds a sense of pause, of attention directed inward rather than outward. You sit back, slightly resting on your heels. The ground beneath you is warm, the air still carrying the soft movement of the breeze. The sounds of the wider group continue in the background, but here they feel distant, contained. You might think of pattern and rituals, structured, defined, with clear meaning. Here meaning is less visible, more felt, more shared without explanation. There is still ongoing discussion about how early human belief systems formed, or if they can even be described in the same way as later spiritual practices. What you see here does not offer answers, only hints. The object is placed down gently, not discarded, not set aside carelessly, placed as if its presence matters. The group begins to shift again. The moment loosens. Attention spreads outward once more. You rise slowly, brushing your hands against your legs. The traces of pigment remain on the ground, faint but real. You take a step back, then another. The space returns to its broader rhythm, movement, sound, light, but something lingers. A sense that not everything here is about survival alone. That alongside food, shelter and movement there is something else beginning to form. Quiet, unclear, but present. And as you continue walking, rejoining the flow of the day, that sense stays with you. Not fully understood, but not forgotten. You step away from the small gathering, leaving the marked stone and faint traces of pigment behind you. The sense of quiet attention lingers, but it softens as you return to the broader movement of the group. Your path curves naturally towards a darker area ahead. At first, it is only a shadow along the side of a low rise. But as you approach, the shape becomes clearer. A narrow opening, partially hidden by uneven rock, leading into a space where the light does not fully reach. You slow. The air changes as you draw closer. Cooler still. You step carefully toward the entrance, your feet adjusting to the uneven surface. Small stones shift slightly beneath you, their movement contained but noticeable. You pause at the edge. Inside, the light fades quickly. The bright clarity of the day softens into dim tones of grey and brown. The air carries a faint scent of stone and something else, something older, subtle but present. You take a step inside, then another. Your eyes begin to adjust. Shapes emerge slowly from the darkness. The curve of the walls, the uneven surface beneath your feet. The way the ceiling dips slightly, then rises again further in. The space is not large, but it holds depth, a sense of distance that extends beyond what you can immediately see. What we can observe from early sites is that caves like this were used by prehistoric humans not only for shelter but also for activities that left lasting marks. These spaces often preserve traces of human presence in ways that open landscapes cannot. You move further in, your steps quieter now. The outside world fades behind you. The sounds of the group, the movement of wind through grass, even the warmth of the sun. All of it remains at the entrance, replaced by a stillness that feels different. Contained, you reach out, placing your hand lightly against the wall. The surface is cool and slightly damp. Your fingers trace along it, feeling the natural unevenness. Small ridges, slight indentations. The stone is not smooth, but it holds its shape in a way that feels permanent. You continue forward. The light grows dimmer, but not completely gone. Enough reaches inside to reveal faint shapes along the walls. At first they seem random, variations in colour, differences in texture. Then slowly they begin to form something else. Lines, curves, shapes that do not belong to the stone alone. You step closer, your eyes focus, and you begin to see them clearly. Markings, simple but intentional. A closer examination reveals that early humans created cave art using natural pigments such as ochre charcoal and minerals. These markings often depicted animals' shapes or abstract patterns, and are found in many regions across the world. You lift your hand slightly, not touching the markings, but following their outline in the air. The lines are uneven, yet controlled. They curve in ways that suggest movement, a shape that could be an animal, a form that repeats with slight variation. You lean in a little closer. The colour is faded but still visible. Reds, dark browns, soft blacks. Time has softened them, but not erased them. One intriguing aspect is that many of these images were created deep within caves, far from the entrance where light would have been limited. This suggests that their creation required intention, effort, and perhaps something beyond immediate practicality. You take another step. The ground shifts slightly beneath your feet, uneven but stable. The air remains still, holding a quiet weight that feels different from the open land. You glance back briefly. The entrance is still visible, a soft frame of light outlining the path you came through. Beyond it, the world continues. Movement, sound, warmth. But here inside, time feels slower. You turn back to the wall. The markings continue, not covering every surface, but appearing in certain places as if chosen. You notice that some shapes overlap others. Layers, moments added over time. There is still no clear consensus on exactly what these markings meant to the people who created them. Some interpretations suggest they were connected to storytelling, others to ritual or symbolic expression, and some remain cautious, emphasizing that meaning may not be fully recoverable. You sit down slowly, letting yourself settle into the space. The ground is cool beneath you. The air does not move. The silence is deeper here, not empty, but full in a different way. You listen. There are no voices, no footsteps, only the faint sound of your own breath. You look again at the markings. They do not change. They do not move, and yet they hold something. Presence, memory. A quiet but important insight is that creating something meant to last even in a world where most things do not reflect a shift in how humans relate to time. Not just the present moment, but something beyond it. You rest your hands on your knees. The coolness of the stone beneath you, the stillness of the air, the faint colours on the wall, all of it settles around you. You do not need to understand it fully. You do not need to name it. It is enough to be here. After a while you rise again, slowly. You take one last look at the markings. Then you turn and begin to walk back toward the entrance. The light grows stronger with each step. The air shifts. The sounds return. And as you step back into the open, the warmth of the day meets you again. But something remains, a quiet awareness that even in a time before written words, before cities or structures, humans were already leaving something behind. Not just tools, not just traces of movement, but marks, held in stone, carried across time. You step fully back into the open light, and for a moment the brightness feels stronger than before. Your eyes narrow slightly as they adjust the warm tones of the day returning all at once. The air moves again across your skin, carrying the familiar sense of grass and soil. Behind you the cave remains quiet, its cool stillness holding what you just experienced. Ahead the world continues. You take a slow breath and begin to walk again, your steps steady as you rejoin the wider movement of the group. The land stretches out in soft curves, its textures more visible now under the full light of day. Time passes, not marked, but felt. The sun shifts, gradually climbing higher, then beginning its slow descent. The light changes almost without notice, softening at the edges, casting longer shadows across the ground. You begin to sense it, the approach of evening. Not sudden, but inevitable. The air cools just slightly enough to be felt against your arms. The breeze returns, moving more steadily now, brushing through the grasses and carrying faint distant sounds. You look around. The group is still active, but the rhythm has changed. Movements are slower. Tasks begin to wind down. Some figures turn back toward the shelter area, their paths curving inward. You follow, not because you're told, but because the pattern feels right. What stands out here is how the day closes without a clear signal. There is no announcement that it is time to stop, no defined ending. Instead, the transition happens, gradually shaped by light, temperature, and shared understanding. You walk alongside others, now your distance closing slightly as paths converge. The space between you narrows, not tightly but enough to feel the group drawing together again. As you approach the familiar area near the shelter, the fire comes into view. It has been maintained. The embers have been fed, built back into a small, steady flame. Thin pieces of dry material are placed carefully one at a time, ensuring the fire remains controlled. You step closer. The warmth reaches you almost immediately, gentle but noticeable after the cooler air outside. You lower yourself to the ground near the edge of the fire's glow. Others are saying, insane. Not all at once, but gradually forming a loose gathering. Some sit, some remain standing for a while longer. A few move around the edges, adjusting materials, checking the fire, preparing for the night. A detail that often slips past notice is how important this return to the fire would have been. It is not only a source of heat but also a centre of safety, a place where the group gathers, where the edges of the unknown feel more distant. You listen, the sounds of the day fade, not completely, but they soften. In their place, new sounds emerge. The quiet crackle of the fire, the shifting of bodies settling into place, the faint movements of the land beyond. You look outward past the circle of light. The landscape is changing again. The colours deepen, the shadows lengthen. The edges of objects become less defined as the light fades. You feel a subtle shift within yourself, not fear, but awareness. The world beyond the fire grows less visible, less certain. It's widely believed that night presented a very different set of challenges for early humans. Limited visibility increased risk, making the presence of fire even more important for protection and reassurance. You draw your knees slightly closer, adjusting your position. The ground beneath you is cooled, but the warmth of the fire balances it. You extend your hands toward the heat, feeling it spread slowly across your skin. Nearby, a figure adds another piece of material to the fire. The flames respond immediately, rising slightly, then settling again. Controlled, watched. You glance around at the others. Their faces are softer in the firelight, the features less defined, the shadows moving gently with each flicker. The earlier activity has given way to illness or something close to it. A few quiet sounds pass between individuals. Short, low, carried more by tone than by structure. Another idea proposes that evening gatherings like this may have been important for strengthening group bonds, offering time for shared presence after the practical demands of the day. You feel that now, the closeness, the shared space. No one moves far from the fire. The circle holds. You lean back slightly, resting your weight more comfortably. The sky above begins to darken, though not fully yet. A deepening blue spreads slowly, the light fading in layers rather than all at once. You look up. The first faint points of light begin to appear. Stars, small, distant. You watch them for a moment, letting your gaze soften. There is something calming in their presence. Constant, unmoving, beyond everything below. You return your attention to the fire. The flames continue their quiet movement, rising and falling, casting light and shadow in steady rhythm. The group remains close, present. You might think of how different night feels today, filled with artificial light with sounds that never fully fade. Here the transition is complete. Day gives way to night without interruption, without resistance. A subtle insight is that this natural cycle would have shaped how early humans experienced time itself. Not divided into hours and minutes, but into light and dark, activity and rest. You feel your body respond to it, the slight heaviness returning, the quiet pull towards stillness. The day is ending. Not abruptly, but gently, and as you sit there surrounded by the soft glow of the fire and the growing darkness beyond, you begin to sense the edge of something else, the unknown, not as a threat, but as a presence. Waiting just beyond the light, you remain seated near the fire. Your body settled into its warmth as the darkness deepens beyond the edges of the light. The sky above has shifted fully now, no longer holding the fading tones of evening, but opening into a wide, quiet night. The stars are clearer, more numerous. They spread across the sky in patterns that feel both distant and familiar, though you do not name them. You simply notice their presence steady and unchanging. You lower your gaze again. The fire continues to burn its light, forming a soft boundary around the group. Beyond that boundary, the land fades into shadow. Shapes become less distinct. Movement becomes harder to see. You listen. At first it seems quiet, but then slowly the sounds begin to emerge. A faint rustle in the distance, a soft call carried across the air, the movement of something unseen. The world does not sleep. It changes. Evidence suggests that nighttime in prehistoric environments was filled with subtle activity, much of it belonging to animals that moved more freely under cover of darkness. For humans, this meant a shift in awareness relying more on sound than sight. You tilt your head slightly, focusing on one of the sounds. It comes again, low, distant. You cannot see its source, but you feel its presence. You notice how the group responds. No one reacts sharply. No sudden movements, but there is a quiet alertness that settles into the space. Postures shift slightly, eyes turn toward the dark. The fire becomes more than warmth now. It becomes a line, a boundary between what is known and what is not. A detail that often slips past notice is how firelight changes perception. It illuminates what is near, but also deepens the shadows beyond, making the unknown feel both closer and further away at the same time. You draw your arms in, slightly adjusting your position. The warmth of the fire reaches your front while your back feels the cooler air. The contrast is gentle but clear. You shift a little closer, letting the balance settle. Another sound, this time from a different direction, a sharper call. Brief, then silence again. Some interpretations suggest that early humans became highly skilled at identifying animals by sound alone, distinguishing between harmless movement and potential danger. Others remain cautious, noting that this ability likely varied depending on experience and environment. You listen more closely now, not searching, just receiving. The sounds form a pattern, though not a predictable one. They rise and fall, appear and fade, each carrying a small piece of information. You begin to notice something else. The fire itself has a sound, a soft crackle, a shifting, a quiet release of energy as the material burns. It becomes part of the soundscape, grounding the space, reminding you of what is near and certain. You glance around the group. Some remain seated as you are, their bodies relaxed but not fully at rest. Others lie down, their forms partially illuminated by the firelight, their breathing slow and steady. A few still sit upright, their gaze directed outward, watching the edges of the light. Watching, waiting. What we can observe from early human behavior is that nighttime likely required a balance between rest and vigilance. Not everyone could sleep deeply at once. Awareness had to remain within the group even as individuals drifted into rest. You shift your weight slightly, leaning forward for a moment, then settling back again. Your body feels the day now, not in exhaustion, but in gentle heaviness, a natural slowing. You extend your hands toward the fire again, feeling the warmth spread across your fingers. Then you lower them, resting them against your legs. The ground beneath you has cooled further, but the heat of the fire balances it. The air carries a faint chill, now more noticeable as the night deepens. You take a slow breath. The scent of smoke is stronger in the cooler air, mixing with the subtle smells of the land. You look out again into the darkness. The shapes are almost gone now. Only the closest forms remain visible. Everything else blends into shadow. And yet the world is still there, moving, existing. A small but meaningful clue comes from how humans adapted to this, not by eliminating the darkness, but by learning to exist within it, to accept its limits, to rely on other senses. You close your eyes for a brief moment. The sounds become clearer, the rustle of grass, the distant call again, the steady crackle of the fire. When you open them, the light feels softer. The edge is less sharp. You feel yourself settling further, the tension of the day releasing, the need for movement fading. You glance once more at the others. Some are already asleep. Others remain still, their attention quiet but present. The group holds together, even in rest. Experts have proposed that this shared space of night may have strengthened bonds within early human groups, creating a sense of safety through proximity and presence. You shift slightly, lowering yourself closer to the ground, not fully lying down yet, but preparing. The fire continues to burn steadily. The sounds continue beyond it. The night deepens, and you remain there between wakefulness and rest, held within the circle of light and the quiet, unseen world beyond it. You lower yourself slowly onto the ground, easing into a position that feels natural rather than planned. The fire continues to burn beside you, its warmth reaching just far enough to soften the coolness of the night air. You shift once then, again adjusting the placement of your body. There is no bed waiting, no structured space prepared in advance, only the ground shaped slightly by use and whatever materials you choose to bring closer. You reach for a piece of hide nearby and pull it toward you. The surface feels familiar under your fingers, worn in places softer, where it has been handled many times before. You lay it beneath part of your body, creating a small layer between yourself and the earth. It is not perfect, but it is enough. Evidence suggests that early humans created simple sleeping arrangements using natural materials such as hides, grasses, and leaves. These layers provided insulation and a degree of comfort even in environments that would feel harsh by modern standards. You lower yourself further, letting your weight settle. The ground feels firm but not unyielding. It supports you in a way that requires no adjustment once you stop moving. Your body begins to relax, not all at once, but gradually. Your shoulders soften, your hands rest loosely, your breathing slows. Around you, others are doing the same. Some already lie still, their forms barely moving in the firelight. Others shift quietly, making small adjustments, finding positions that allow rest without discomfort. There is no single way to sleep here. Each person finds their own balance. A detail that rarely gets attention is that sleep in early human groups may not have followed the same continuous pattern we expect today. It may have been lighter, more flexible, shaped by the need to remain aware of the surroundings. You notice this as you lie there. No one seems fully disconnected from the world. Even in stillness there is a sense of awareness. The fire crackles softly. A piece of material shifts, sending a brief flicker of light across the ground. Shadows move gently, then settle again. You pull the hide slightly closer around your side, adjusting it against the cooler air. The contrast between warmth and cold becomes part of the experience. Not uncomfortable, just present. You turn your head slightly, looking toward the edge of the fire's light. Beyond it, the darkness holds its quiet depth. You cannot see far, but you can hear. The same distant sounds continue. A rustle, a call, a faint movement carried across the land. Studies of early human sites reveal that sleeping near a fire not only provided warmth, but also helped reduce the risk from predators, creating a safer space within an otherwise uncertain environment. You feel that now. The subtle reassurance of the light, the boundary it creates. You close your eyes for a moment. Not fully, just enough to rest them. The sounds remain, clearer perhaps without sight. You open them again. The fire still burns. The group still rests. Nothing has changed. And that in itself is calming. You shift your legs slightly, finding a position that allows them to relax more fully. Your body continues to settle. The weight of the day lingers, but not as strain. More like a gentle reminder of movement of activity now complete. You take a slow breath. Inhale. Exhale. The rhythm becomes steady. One subtle pattern emerges when you observe the group more closely. Not everyone sleeps at once. A few figures remain more upright. Their posture slightly different, their gaze occasionally lifting toward the darkness. They are not tense, but they are aware. Another explanation considers that early human groups may have naturally developed shared vigilance, with some individuals remaining more alert while others rested, creating a balance that allowed for both safety and recovery. You feel comfort in that, even without direct distraction. The presence of others, awake, nearby. You turn slightly onto your side. The ground feels cooler there, untouched by your body heat. You adjust the hide again, creating a small barrier, then settle once more. The firelight reaches your face in soft pulses, warm, then less warm, then warm again. It becomes a rhythm of its own. You listen to it. The crackle, the faint shift of embers, the occasional soft collapse of material as it burns down. It blends with the sounds beyond, forming a quiet, continuous layer of sound. You might think of modern sleep, soft beds, controlled environments, silence or carefully chosen noise. Here sleep is different, less controlled, more connected. You are not separated from the world, you are within it. A quiet observation is that this kind of sleep, shaped by environment rather than isolation, may have influenced how early humans experienced rest itself, not as a complete withdrawal, but as a lighter state ready to shift if needed. You feel yourself drifting closer to that state, not fully asleep, but no longer fully awake. Your thoughts slow, your awareness softens. The fire continues to burn. The group remains close. The night holds steady around you. And as your body settles further into the ground, into the warmth, into the shared quiet of the space, you begin to move gently toward rest. You rest there in that in-between state, not fully asleep, not fully awake. Your body settled into the warmth of the fire and the firmness of the ground. Your breathing has slowed, your muscles softened, yet your awareness lingers just enough to notice the world around you. The night continues, not loudly, but steadily. You hear the faint crackle of the fire beside you, the occasional shift of embers, the soft movement of someone adjusting their position nearby. Beyond that, the distant sounds remain, subtle layered, never completely still. You close your eyes again, this time longer. The darkness behind your eyelids feels different from the darkness outside, softer, more contained. Your thoughts begin to drift, not in clear lines, but in loose fragments. Images begin to form, not sharply, but gently, a faint memory of the open land from earlier. The curve of the stream, the shape of the animal in the grass, the markings on the cave wall, they appear and fade, overlapping, shifting without order. Studies of human cognition suggest that dreaming may have existed far back in our evolutionary past, linked to the way the brain processes experience and memory. Though we cannot know exactly how early humans experienced dreams, the basic structures of the human brain were already in place. You feel yourself slipping further. The boundary between waking and dreaming softens. The sounds of the night blend with the images forming in your mind. A movement beside you becomes part of a shifting scene. The warmth of the fire becomes a distant glow within your thoughts. You are still here, and not entirely. A detail that rarely gets attention is how natural this transition is. Without artificial light or structured schedules, sleep follows the rhythm of the body and the environment, moving gradually rather than suddenly. You drift deeper. The images grow less connected to the present. Shapes form and dissolve, movement happens without clear cause. Familiar things appear in unfamiliar ways. The land feels larger. The group feels both near and far. You walk, but not with your early. You see, but not with your eyes. There is still some uncertainty about how much early humans reflected on their dreams, or whether they assigned meaning to them in the same way later cultures did. Some interpretations suggest that dreams may have influenced early beliefs or storytelling, while others remain cautious. You do not question it. You simply experience the sensation of movement continues, then shifts, then fades. You begin to return, not suddenly, but slowly. The sounds of the night grow clearer again. The crackle of the fire becomes distinct. The coolness of the air touches your skin once more. You open your eyes. The fire is still there. Lower now. The flames smaller, the glow softer, but still present. The group remains. Some lie still deep in sleep. Others shift slightly. Their movements subtle, their breathing steady. You do not sit up. You remain where you are. But your awareness has returned. A closer look shows that sleep here is not a single continuous state. It comes and goes. Light then deeper, then light again. A natural rhythm shaped by the environment rather than controlled by it. You adjust your position slightly, pulling the hide closer as the air feels cooler now. The night has deepened. The warmth of the day has fully faded. You turn your head, looking toward the edge of the firelight. The darkness feels thicker now, more complete. The distant sounds continue, but they feel further away, as if the world itself has settled. Another explanation considers that waking during the night may have been common, allowing individuals to check their surroundings before returning to rest. This pattern might have contributed to the overall safety of the group. You feel that briefly. A moment of alertness, a quiet scan of your surroundings. Then the sense of safety returns. The fire still burns. The group still rests. Nothing has changed, and so you allow yourself to settle again. You close your eyes once more. The transition is easier this time. Familiar. Expected. Your body knows this rhythm. You do not resist it. The sounds soften again, blending into the background. Your breathing slows. Your muscles release. The faint images return, though less vivid, now more distant, like echoes rather than scenes. What becomes clear is that rest here is not separate from the world, but woven into it. Sleep does not remove you from your surroundings. It simply shifts your place within them. You drift, gently. The fire continues its quiet work. The night holds steady, and you move once more into that soft, shifting space between awareness and dreams. You drift there for a time that is not measured, held between light sleep and deeper rest, your body rising and falling with each slow breath. The fire beside you has settled into a lower glow. Now its earlier movement softened into a steady warmth that barely reaches beyond the circle of those resting nearby. The night continues its quiet rhythm. Then gradually something begins to change. It is not a sound at first. Not movement, but a feeling, a subtle shift in the air. You sense it before you see it. The darkness begins to loosen. Very slightly, you open your eyes. The sky above is still dark, but not as deep as before. A faint greyness begins to form along the horizon, almost invisible unless you're looking for it. Dawn is approaching. You remain where you were watching. The transition is slow, so slow that it feels almost like nothing is happening at all. And yet with each passing moment, the darkness softens just a little more. Archaeological records show that early human activity was often closely tied to natural light cycles. Without artificial lighting, daily routines followed the rise and fall of the sun, shaping patterns of waking and rest. You shift slightly, adjusting your position. The ground beneath you feels cool, having lost the warmth of the previous day. The hide around you holds some of your body heat, but the air carries a chill that was not there before. You pull the material closer. Around you, others begin to stir. Not all at once. A small movement here, a quiet breath there. A figure shifts, turning onto their side. Another sits up slowly, their posture still heavy with sleep. The fire is still alive. Barely. A soft glow remains hidden beneath a thin layer of ash. It pulses faintly, a quiet reminder of the warmth it once held. You watch as one figure leans forward, brushing away some of the ash with careful hands. A small piece of dry material is placed on top, then another. The glow responds. A faint spark, then a small flame. It grows slowly, not rushing, just enough to return. One fascinating aspect is how important it was to preserve fire overnight. Allowing it to fully go out could mean significant effort to restart it, so maintaining even a small ember was essential. You sit up now, your movements unhurried. Your body feels different, rested, but not in the deep, uninterrupted way you might expect. Instead, there is a lightness, a readiness to move again without resistance. You place your hand against the ground. Cool, firm, familiar. You push yourself up, standing slowly. The light continues to grow. The grey along the horizon deepens, spreading upward, softening the edges of the sky. Shapes around you begin to reappear. The outlines of bodies, the form of the shelter, the land beyond. You take a slow breath. The air is crisp, clean. It carries the scent of damp earth and the faint trace of smoke from the fire. Looking deeper, we notice that early mornings like this likely played a key role in resetting the rhythm of the group. A natural beginning guided not by timekeeping but by light and temperature. You step away from where you rested, your feet finding the ground with quiet certainty. The group begins to move again, some rise immediately. Others take longer, remaining seated for a few moments before standing. A few remain lying down, their breathing, still slow, their bodies not yet ready to wake. There is no pressure, no need to hurry. The day begins when it begins. You glance toward the horizon again. The first hint of colour appears, a faint warmth beneath the grey. The sky shifts gradually, the change so slow that it feels continuous rather than separate. You walk a few steps away from the fire, stretching your body slightly as you move. Your muscles respond easily, the stiffness of rest fading with each motion. A detail that rarely gets attention is how naturally the human body adapts to these cycles when not disrupted. Waking with the light, resting with the dark. Movement and stillness following the environment. You feel that alignment now. Your body does not resist the morning. It moves with it. Nearby, someone bends to gather materials from the ground. Another adjusts a piece of hide, shaking it slightly before draping it over their shoulders. The sounds of the group begin to return. Soft, measured, a quiet reawakening. The fire grows a little stronger, its flames rising just enough to bring warmth back into the space. The light from it mixes with the growing daylight, creating a gentle overlap between night and morning. You stand there for a moment, taking it in. The return of light, the movement of the group, the continuation of something that does not need to be restarted, only resumed. There is still some uncertainty about how structured these transitions were in early human life, but what becomes clear is that they followed natural cues rather than fixed schedules. You take another breath, then step forward. The day begins again, not as a new thing, but as a continuation of what has always been. You move with the others as the light continues to grow, your steps falling easily into the renewed rhythm of the morning. The fire remains behind you now, still tended, still alive, but no longer the center of attention as the group begins to spread out once more. The air feels cooler than it did the day before at this same time. Not sharply, but enough to notice. You draw your covering a little closer across your shoulders as you walk your body, responding without needing to think about it. Ahead, the land stretches outward in a familiar pattern, but something about it feels different today. Subtle, easy to miss. You notice how the group does not move in quite the same way as before. The direction shifts slightly. The spacing changes. The path you follow curves differently, leading you away from the exact places you visited earlier. Movement is not random. It adjusts. Evidence points to early human groups being highly mobile, often shifting their location based on changing conditions such as food availability, water access, and seasonal patterns. These movements were not always long-distance migrations, but they were frequent enough to shape how people interacted with their environment. You continue forward, your attention expanding to take in the wider space. The plants here are not exactly the same. Some are more sparse, others appear in different clusters. The ground feels slightly drier underfoot. You pause briefly. A small but telling sign is the condition of the soil. Less moisture, fewer signs of recent growth, a shift that might not seem important at first but becomes meaningful over time. You glance ahead. A few figures have already moved further, their pace steady, their path angled toward a distant rise. You follow, not because you are directed, but because the movement feels shared. From what researchers have uncovered, early human groups likely developed a strong awareness of their surroundings over time, recognizing when an area could no longer support their needs as effectively as before. You walk for a while in quiet. The ground rises gently beneath your feet, the slope gradual but noticeable. Your body adjusts naturally, leaning forward slightly as you climb. The sun continues its slow ascent. The light brightens. The air begins to warm again. You feel the change across your skin, the coolness of the early morning fading into something softer. You reach the top of the rise and pause. From here, the view opens. You can see further than before. The land stretches out in wide rolling shapes with patches of vegetation scattered across it. In the distance, you notice a darker area, perhaps denser growth, perhaps a different kind of terrain. You stand there for a moment, observing. Others do the same. No one speaks. But the pause itself carries meaning. A quiet pattern could be seen in moments like this. The group takes in the landscape together, not formally, but through shared attention. Each person gathers information in their own way, contributing to a collective understanding. You begin to move again, descending the far side of the rise. The ground shifts once more, softer in places, more uneven. You step carefully, your feet finding stable ground without hesitation. A figure ahead slows, then bends slightly, examining something on the ground. You approach. It is a plant different from those you saw earlier. Taller, with narrower leaves, its colour slightly deeper. The figure reaches down, touches it, then moves on without taking it. A closer inspection shows that not every available resource is used immediately. Some are left behind either because they are not suitable, not needed, or better gathered at a different time. You continue walking. The group stretches out again, each person moving at a pace that feels natural to them. The distance between you increases slightly, but the connection remains. You can still see them, still hear the faint sounds of movement, still sense their presence. You step over a small patch of stones, their surfaces warmed slightly by the rising sun. The heat touches the bottom of your feet, a brief sensation that fades as you move on. You take a slow breath. The air feels fuller now, warmer, carrying the scent of dry plants and earth. Another line of thinking proposes that early human movement was not only about immediate survival, but also about maintaining balance with the environment. Moving before resources were exhausted rather than after. You feel that balance now. The absence of urgency. The quiet decision to move not because you must, but because it is time. The land continues to unfold before you, each step revealing small differences, each moment adding to your understanding of where you are. You glance back briefly. The shelter is no longer visible. The fire is gone from sight. But neither feels lost. They remain part of the path behind you, part of the larger movement that continues forward. You turn your attention ahead again. The group continues. The day continues. And you move with it not toward a fixed destination, but along a path shaped by need, memory, and quiet awareness. You continue down the slope with the others, your pace steady, your awareness spread across the land ahead. The ground shifts gently beneath your feet, the texture changing from firmer soil to a mix of softer patches and scattered stones. Each step requires just enough attention to remain balanced, but never enough to feel difficult. The group stretches out again, each person moving in their own path, yet never fully separate. After some time, you begin to notice something different. At first, it is only a faint sign, a disturbance in the ground. Footprints, not the ones you have seen before. These are similar, but not the same. You slow your steps. Looking more carefully, the spacing is slightly different. The depth varies in ways that feel unfamiliar. The direction does not quite match your own. You pause. Others nearby do the same. No one speaks, but attention gathers. A subtle detail worth noticing is how quickly the group responds to signs like this. Not with alarm, but with awareness. Movement slows, eyes lower to the ground, the pattern shifts. You crouch slightly, examining one of the prints. It's clear enough to see the shape. Human, but not from your group. Excavations have revealed that early humans often encountered other groups as they moved across shared landscapes. These encounters could range from cautious observation to interaction, though the nature of these meetings is not always clear. You rise again, your gaze lifting from the ground to the space ahead. The land continues as before. Quiet, open, but now there is something else within it. Presence. You take a slow breath. The air feels unchanged, but your awareness has shifted. You continue forward more slowly now. The group tightens slightly, not gathering in one place, but moving with a closer sense of connection. The space between you narrows just enough to feel different. You notice how often glances are exchanged. Brief, subtle. A small but telling sign is that attention is shared more actively now. Each person watches not only the land, but also one another, maintaining a quiet connection. You walk for a while longer, then you see them. Not clearly at first, just movement in the distance, shapes that do not belong to the land itself. You stop, others stop as well. The distance remains, enough to see, not enough to approach without decision. The figures across the open space move slowly, much like your own group. Their posture, their pace, their actions feel familiar. And yet they are not you. Different. Separate. A quiet tension forms. Not fear. Not yet. But caution. Different theories suggest different possibilities when it comes to encounters like this. Some suggest early humans avoided each other when possible, while others propose that interaction, exchange, or even cooperation could occur under the right conditions. You remain still, watching. The other group seems to have noticed you as well. Their movement slows, their spacing changes, the same adjustment, mirrored. You feel the moment at stretch. Time holds again, much like it did during the hunt, but in a different way. No one moves closer. No one turns away immediately. The distance remains balanced. You notice small details now. The way they stand, the materials they carry, the slight differences in how they move. Familiar, but not identical. A closer inspection shows that even down small variations can signal difference. The shape of tools, the way coverings are worn, the patterns of movement. These details may have carried meaning even if not fully understood. You take a slow breath. Your body remains calm, aware. You glance briefly at those nearest to you. Their posture matches your own, still, observing. A quiet understanding passes through the group, not spoken, but felt. No one advances. No one signals. The moment exists without resolution. After some time, one of the figures in the other group shifts direction, slightly turning away from the direct line between you. Another follows, then another. Gradually their path changes. Not retreating, not approaching, simply moving on. You watch as they continue across the land, their forms growing smaller as distance increases. The tension softens. The space opens again. Another explanation considers that avoidance may have been a common outcome in such encounters, reducing risk while allowing groups to continue their movement without conflict. You remain still for a few seconds longer. Then slowly your group begins to move again. Not rushing, not reacting strongly, just continuing. The path adjusts slightly, curving away from where the other group passed. You follow. The land returns to its earlier quiet. The sounds of movement, the feel of the ground beneath your feet, the warmth of the sun continuing to rise. And yet something lingers, a quiet awareness that you are not alone in this world, that others move through the same spaces, following their own paths, shaped by the same needs. You walk on, the distance between groups restored, the rhythm of the day resumed, but now with a deeper sense of the world around you, wider, more connected, and filled with lives that cross briefly before continuing on their own way. You continue forward with the group, the brief encounter fading behind you, though not entirely forgotten. The land stretches ahead once more in its familiar patterns, and your steps fall back into a steady rhythm. The tension has passed, but something has changed. Your awareness feels wider now, as if the world has expanded beyond the space you move through each day. You walk for some time without stopping, the ground rising and falling gently beneath your feet. The sun continues its slow climb, warming the air, softening the edges of the morning. Around you the group resumes its quiet activity. Some bend to gather, others are already a pause to observe. A few move ahead, scanning the terrain, and within this flow your attention begins to shift again, this time towards something more gradual, less visible, learning. You notice it in the smallest moments, a younger figure moving slightly behind another, watching closely as they reach for a plant. Their gaze follows every motion, the way the hand approaches, the angle of the pull, the choice to take or leave. They do not act immediately. They observe. Then after a moment they try. Their movement is slower, less certain, but guided. What becomes increasingly clear is that knowledge here is not taught in the way you might expect. There are no formal lessons, no spoken instructions that define each step. Instead, it is shown, repeated, absorbed. Studies of early human communities reveal that learning likely occurred through observation and imitation, with younger members acquiring skills by watching others and practicing over time. You slow slightly, watching the interaction. The older figure does not correct directly. They continue their own task, allowing the younger one to follow, to match, to adjust. A quiet pattern can be seen in this approach. Guidance without interruption. Support without control. You walk a little further, noticing similar moments unfolding around you. A younger individual handling a tool, their grip slightly different, their movements less precise. An older one nearby adjusts their own tool in a more exaggerated way, making the motion clearer without drawing attention to it. The younger one watches, then adjusts. A small but telling sign is that learning here is continuous. It does not begin or end at a specific time. It exists within every action, every shared moment. You feel it even in yourself, the way your hands moved earlier, the way your steps follow the land. Not all of it comes from deliberate thought. Much of it comes from repetition, from being within the group, from doing. A subtle detail worth noticing is how little separation there is between learning and living. They are the same process unfolding together. You pause near a small cluster of plants, lowering yourself slightly as you examine them. Your hand hovers, then moves. The decision feels easier now, more familiar. You gather a few, leaving others behind your choices, guided by what you've already seen, already done. You stand again, brushing your hands lightly. Nearby, the younger figure you noticed earlier does the same. Their movements are closer now, more confident. You glance at them briefly. They do not look directly at you, but the connection is there, shared. A small step forward, another line of thinking proposes that this form of learning allowed early humans to adapt quickly to changing environments, passing on knowledge efficiently without the need for formal systems. You continue walking. The group moves with you, each person carrying their own understanding shaped by their experience, observation, and time. The land shifts again beneath your feet, a slight change in texture, a new arrangement of plants. Each difference adds to what you know. You look ahead. The path continues, not fixed, but known in a different way. A closer inspection shows that knowledge here is not stored in objects or written records. It lives in people, in memory, in action. You feel that now, the way the day unfolds, the way each moment builds on the last. Nothing is separate. Everything connects. You take a slow breath. The air feels warmer now, the sun higher, the movement of the group steady and calm. You walk on, carrying what you have learned without needing to think about it. And as the group continues across the land, the quiet exchange of knowledge moves with you, passed from one to another, shaping each step, each choice, each moment that follows. You continue moving with the group, the quiet rhythm of walking and gathering unfolding without interruption. The land stretches ahead in gentle variation, and your steps follow its contours with growing ease. The sun has climbed higher now, its warmth more present against your skin. The air feels fuller, carrying the scent of dry grass and earth warmed through the morning. As you walk, your attention shifts again, this time toward the smallest members of the group. They move differently. Not slower exactly, but less direct. You notice one of them a short distance away, their steps uneven, their path wandering slightly from side to side. They pause, often drawn to small things, a patch of plants, a stone, a movement in the grass. They crouch suddenly, reaching toward the ground, then pause, then look around. As if checking, you slow slightly, watching. The child's hand hovers over a plant, uncertain. Their fingers move closer, then stop again. Their gaze shifts toward an older figure nearby. The older figure does not turn fully. They do not speak. They simply continue their movement, but slower now, more visible. The child watches, then tries again. Their hand closes around the plant. They pull. It comes free, though not cleanly. The roots drag slightly, clumps of soil clinging. The child looks at it, turning it in their hand. Then after a moment they drop it and move on. A detail that often goes unnoticed is how much early learning depended on this kind of exploration. Not every attempt leads to success, and not every action is corrected. Trial, observation, and repetition form the process. You continue walking, your pace matching the group. Another child runs briefly ahead, then slows, then stops. Their attention caught by something unseen. Their movement is quick, then still, then quick again. Unstructured, but not without out purpose. Research indicates that play may have been an important part of development even in early human societies, allowing younger members to practice movement coordination and awareness in ways that felt natural rather than forced. You watch as the child bends, picking up a small stone. They turn it over in their hand, examining it closely. Then they tap it lightly against another stone. The sound is soft, but noticeable. They repeat the motion. Again. Nearby, an older figure glances briefly in their direction, not to stop them, just to observe. A subtle but important clue is that learning here is not separated from curiosity. The two exist together, each action driven by interest as much as need. You step around a small cluster of plants, your feet finding clear ground without effort. The child with the stones continues for a moment longer, then drops them and moves on, their attention already shifting elsewhere. Nothing is held for long. Everything is explored briefly. You notice another moment. A younger figure walking beside an older one, their steps closer now, their movement more aligned. The older figure reaches down, gathering something quickly, then holds it slightly higher than usual before placing it into a bundle. The motion is subtle, but visible. The younger one watches closely, then tries to imitate it. Their movement is slower, less precise, but similar. Looking more carefully, we can see that these small demonstrations form a kind of guidance. Not formal instruction, but visible action that can be followed. You feel it in your own movements again. The way your hands now reach more directly. The way your steps adjust more easily. You are learning too, even now. A quiet observation is that this process never fully ends. Knowledge continues to build, shaped by each new experience, each repeated action. You walk further, the group spreading slightly again as the land opens. The children move between others, sometimes close, sometimes further away, but never fully separate. Their movement is watched, though not constantly. There is space, but also connection. Another possible explanation is that this balance allowed younger members to explore while still remaining within the safety of the group, gradually expanding their understanding of the environment. You pause briefly, letting your gaze follow one of them as they move. They stop again, this time simply standing, looking out across the land. No action, just observation. You recognize that moment. The same pause you have seen, the same quiet attention. What stands out is that this behavior appears early, not as something taught directly, but as something absorbed. You take a slow breath. The air is warmer now, the sun higher, the day moving forward without interruption. You begin to walk again. The group continues. The children move among you, learning without being told, exploring without being guided, step by step. And as you move with them, you begin to understand that survival here is not only about knowledge passed down, it is also about curiosity, the willingness to look, to try, to repeat, and to grow into the rhythm that surrounds you. You continue forward to the steady rhythm of the group carrying you across the land as the warmth of the day settles more fully into the air. The sun stands higher now, its light pressing gently across your shoulders and back, while the ground beneath your feet holds a quiet heat that builds with each passing moment. The movement remains calm, unhurried, but your attention begins to shift again, this time towards something less balanced. You notice it first in a change of pace. A figure ahead moves more slowly than the others. Their steps are shorter, less even. They pause more often, not to gather or observe, but simply to stop. You slow as you approach. The difference becomes clearer. Their posture is slightly bent, their movements careful in a way that feels different from the usual attention to the ground. This is not observation. This is adjustment. You remain a short distance away watching. Another figure moves closer to them, not quickly, not urgently, but with quiet awareness. They stand nearby, waiting. The slower figure takes another step, then pauses again. The ground here is uneven, scattered with small stones. A misstep could easily happen even to someone steady. Evidence points to the fact that life in prehistoric environments carried constant physical risk. Uneven terrain, sharp tools, unpredictable conditions. Injury was always a possibility. You watch as the second figure reaches out slightly, not grabbing, not pulling, just placing a hand lightly near the arm of the first. Support! The contact is brief, but enough. The slower figure shifts their weight, adjusting, then continues forward with a little more balance. A detail that often goes unnoticed is how subtle assistance can be. It does not always appear as direct help. Sometimes it is simply being close enough to respond when needed. You walk alongside them for a few steps, your pace matching theirs. The group adjusts naturally. Those ahead continue, but not so far that distance becomes a separation. Those behind close the gap slightly, the spacing shifting without discussion. No one calls attention to it. Stops the entire group. The movement continues, but with a quiet change. Research indicates that early human groups may have supported injured or less able members more than once believed, as seen in skeletal remains that show signs of healing over time. You notice how the slower figure places their foot more carefully, now testing the ground before shifting their weight. Their movement is deliberate, each step chosen rather than automatic. You feel your own steps change in response. Slower, more aware. The path becomes something shared, adjusted by everyone rather than followed individually. You glance at the ground again. Small stone. Uneven patches. Nothing extreme, but enough. A subtle but important clue is that even minor challenges in this environment require attention. There is no separation between safe and unsafe spaces. Every step carries some degree of risk. The slower figure pauses again, this time longer. The second figure remains beside them, their presence steady. Another nearby glances in their direction, then shifts slightly closer. No words are exchanged. But the connection forms. You remain where you are, allowing space yet staying near enough to respond if needed. The moment stretches, then passes. The slower figure takes another step, then another. The movement resumes. It seems likely that this kind of support was not exceptional, but part of the group's ongoing behavior. Survival depended not only on individual strength, but on the ability to remain together. You walk on. The pace gradually returns to something more, even though still slightly slower than before. The group spreads out again, but the earlier adjustment lingers in the way people move. You notice how often glances pass now. Brief checks, small confirmations. A quiet pattern can be seen in these moments. Awareness extends beyond the self, including others within it. You take a slow breath. The air feels warm, carrying the scent of dry plants and earth. The sun presses gently against your skin. The ground beneath your feet remains uneven but familiar. You continue walking. The slower figure now moves with more stability, their steps more, even though still careful. The second figure drifts slightly away, not leaving, but no longer directly beside them. The support fades back into presence. Another possible explanation is that this fluid approach allowed the group to maintain both movement and care without needing to stop or divide into separate roles. You feel that balance now, the ability to continue, the willingness to adjust, the quiet understanding that each person matters within the group. You step forward, your pace steady again. The land continues to unfold, the group continues to move. And within that movement, moments like this appear and fade, shaping the rhythm in ways that are not always visible but always present. You continue walking with the group, the pace now steady again, the earlier moment of adjustment fading quietly into the rhythm of the day. The land stretches ahead, familiar in its gentle variation, yet always offering small differences that keep your attention grounded. Time passes. The sun moves higher, then slowly begins its gradual descent. The light softens, the air shifts, and as the group continues forward, something changes once more. It begins subtly, a stillness that feels different from rest, a quiet gathering. You notice a small cluster forming ahead, not large, not drawing attention from afar, but present. You slow your steps as you approach. The figures there are close together, their movement minimal. One kneels, another stands just behind. A third sits their posture lowered, their head slightly bowed. You feel the change in the air, not heavy, but focused. You move closer, stopping at a respectful distance. On the ground between them lies a form, still, wrapped partially in hide. The shape is familiar, human, but unmoving in a way that feels different from sleep. You remain where you are. No one speaks. No sudden movement breaks the quiet. The group does not gather all at once, but more figures begin to drift closer, their steps slower, their posture more contained. Looking at early human burial sites, we can see evidence that even tens of thousands of years ago, people treated the dead in deliberate ways. Bodies were sometimes placed carefully, occasionally with objects or markings nearby. You watch as one figure leans forward, adjusting the hide, slightly covering more of the form beneath. The motion is slow, careful, not hurried. Another places something small beside it. A stone, not shaped, not a tool, just placed. A small but telling sign is that actions like this are intentional. They do not serve immediate survival needs, yet they are done with care. You feel a quiet stillness settle within you, not confusion, not fear, but recognition. This is different. You lower yourself slowly to the ground, sitting with the others, your body mirroring the stillness around you. No one moves abruptly. No one turns away. The moment is held. There remains some uncertainty about exactly what early humans believed about death. Some interpretations suggest a sense of ritual or meaning, while others caution that we cannot fully understand their intentions from physical evidence alone. You look at the form again, still, unchanging. The difference between this and sleep is clear even without explanation. You notice how the group responds. No one reaches out repeatedly. No one attempts to wait. The understanding is shared, a quiet acceptance. Another figure kneels beside the body, placing their hand briefly on the covering. The contact is gentle, then withdrawn. The gesture is simple, but meaningful. You feel your breath slow. The sounds of the wider world seem to fade. Even the wind feels quieter here. A subtle pattern emerges in moments like this. The group pauses, not just in action, but in attention. Time itself seems to stretch, allowing space for something that is not easily defined. You sit there, your hands resting loosely on your knees. The ground beneath you is warm, though the air has begun to cool slightly as the day shifts toward evening. You glance briefly at the others. Their expressions are calm, still, present. There is no visible distress in the way you might expect. No outward display, only a quiet focus. Another line of thinking proposes that early human responses to death may have been less about emotion in the modern sense and more about recognition and continuity. The group adjusts but continues. You feel that now. The stillness is not empty. It is full, held. After some time, the movement begins again. Not suddenly, but gradually. One figure stands, then another. The space opens slightly, though the form on the ground remains. You rise as well. Your body moves carefully as if the moment still surrounds you. You step back, giving space, though no one asks you to. The group begins to shift around the area. Some remain close, others move outward, returning to the broader rhythm. The day continues, even here. A quiet observation is that life does not stop entirely in moments like this. It pauses, adjusts, then moves forward again, carrying the memory within it. You take a slow breath. The air feels different now. Cooler, heavier with the approach of evening. You look once more at the place where the body rests. Then turn. Your steps carry you forward again. The group moves, the land unfolds, and within that movement something remains. A quiet understanding that life here includes not only movement and survival, but also moments of stillness that mark its passing. You walk on with the group, the quiet moment behind you settling into memory without needing to be spoken. The land stretches ahead as it always has, open and patient, holding each step without resistance. The air has begun to cool, not sharply, but enough to be felt against your skin. The sun lowers slowly, its light softening, stretching shadows across the ground in longer lines. The warmth of the day begins to fade, replaced by something gentler. You move at an easy pace. The group remains together, though not tightly. The spacing between you shifts naturally, each person adjusting to the rhythm of movement without thought. After some time, you notice something small. At first, it seems like nothing, just a change in the way one figure moves. They stop near a cluster of stones, kneel, then begin to arrange them. You slow your steps, watching. The stones are not large, not heavy, but they are placed with care, one beside another, then another, forming a small shape. Not random, not accidental. You move a little closer. The figure continues, adjusting the placement slightly, then stepping back to look at it. A small but revealing detail is how intentional these actions feel, even when their purpose is not immediately clear. The shape formed is simple but chosen. Nearby, another figure notices. They pause, then pick up a stone of their own, and add it, not in the same place, but near. The arrangement grows. You stand there for a moment observing. There is no instruction, no clear signal that this is something to be done, and yet it happens. One intriguing element is that early human innovation often began with small changes like this. Not large leaps, but gradual adjustments to how objects were used, arranged, or understood. You crouch slightly, looking more closely. The stones are placed in a loose line, curving slightly as if marking something. A boundary, or a memory, or simply a place. You cannot be certain. There is ongoing uncertainty about how early humans assigned meaning to arrangements like this. Some may have served practical purposes, while others may have carried symbolic or social significance. You reach down and pick up a small stone, turning it in your hand, feeling its weight. Then, after a moment, you place it near the others. The action feels natural, unforced. Another figure passes by, glancing briefly, then continuing without stopping. Not everyone participates, and that is part of it. Nothing here is required. Everything emerges. Looking closely, we can notice that change in this world happens slowly. Not through sudden invention, but through repetition, variation, and quiet experimentation. You stand again, stepping back. The small arrangement remains, not finished, not fixed, just present. You turn and continue walking. The group moves on. The moment fades into the rhythm of the day. But something has shifted. A subtle indication appears in how the tension lingers on small actions. The placement of a stone, the shape of a line, the choice to add or not to add. You feel it in yourself. The awareness that what you do, even in small ways, can leave something behind. The land continues to unfold. The light continues to soften. The air cools further. You walk alongside others, your step steady, your mind quiet. A figure ahead bends to pick up a branch, not for immediate use, but examining it, turning it, then setting it down again in a slightly different position. Another small change, another variation. It seems reasonable to think that these small moments repeated over time begin to shape larger patterns. Tools improve, shelters adapt, movement becomes more efficient. Not all at once, but gradually. You take a slow breath. The air carries the scent of evening now. Cooler, more still. You glance back briefly. The stones remain where they were placed, a small mark on the land. easily overlooked, easily forgotten, and yet present. You turn forward again. The group continues. The day moves toward its end, and within that movement these small acts of change continue to appear. Quiet, unnoticed by many, but shaping the path ahead in ways that will only become clear much later. You walk on with the group as the light softens further the long stretch of the day, easing gently toward its end. The land feels familiar beneath your feet now, not because it has stayed the same, but because you have moved through enough of it to understand its quiet patterns. The air cools steadily. The warmth of the sun lingers, but it no longer presses against your skin. Instead, it fades slowly, leaving behind a softer balance between warmth and chill. The group begins to draw closer again, not tightly, but noticeably. The space between each person narrows, paths curving inward as if guided by something shared rather than spoken. You follow, your steps matching the rhythm without effort. Ahead, the shape of the familiar shelter begins to appear again, rising gently from the land, its outline catching the last of the fading light. You recognize it immediately, not as a fixed home, but as a place returned to. Fossil and site data indicate that early human groups often revisited certain locations repeatedly, forming loose patterns of movement rather than permanent settlements. These places offered familiarity, resources, or simply a known space within a changing landscape. You approach slowly. The ground near the shelter feels more worn, the soil slightly smoother from repeated use. Small traces of earlier activity remain. Scattered materials, faint marks left behind by hands, tools, and movement. You step into the space. The group gathers again. Some move directly toward the fire which has already been tended, its embers coaxed back into a low, steady glow. Others pause at the edges, placing down what they carry, adjusting materials, settling into the familiar rhythm of evening. You lower yourself near the fire once more. The warmth reaches you immediately, soft, steady. You extend your hands slightly, letting the heat settle into your skin. The day begins to fold inward. The sounds of movement soften. The light fades further. You glance around. The group feels whole again. Each person present, each movement connected. What becomes noticeable is how this return completes the cycle of the day. Movement outward, then inward, gathering, then settling. The rhythm repeats, not exactly the same, but close enough to feel constant. You lean back slightly, resting your weight on the ground. The sky above deepens into darker tones, the first stars beginning to appear once more. The firelight flickers gently, casting soft shadows that move across the faces around you. You recognize the pattern now. The day does not end suddenly. It slows, gradually. A quiet but telling sign is that this rhythm has no fixed boundary. There is no clear moment when day becomes night. Instead, the change happens through many small shifts that blend into one another. You take a slow breath. The scent of smoke returns. The coolness of the air settles around you. The warmth of the fire balances it. You feel the familiarity of it all, the repetition, the continuity. Another perspective suggests that this kind of cyclical living may have shaped how early humans understood time, not as a straight path but as a series of repeating patterns, each day connected to the one before. You look toward the others. Some sit quietly, their posture relaxed. Others make small adjustments, preparing for rest. A few still move lightly, finishing the last tasks of the day. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels incomplete. You think briefly of everything that has happened. The movement across the land. The gathering. The watching. The encounter. The quiet moments shared. All of it forms a continuous thread. Not separate events, but part of the same flow. A subtle indication appears when you reflect on it. These lives, simple on the surface, carry a depth that comes from repetition, from connection, from the steady shaping of experience over time. You feel it within yourself, the way your body now understands the ground, the way your hand moves with more certainty, the way your awareness stretches further than before. You are not the same as when the day began, and yet nothing dramatic has changed. You remain where you are, within the group, within the rhythm, within the quiet unfolding of this world. The fire crackles softly, the night deepens, and as you sit there you begin to sense the larger path that stretches far beyond this single day, the countless days before, the countless days after, each one similar, each one slightly different. together forming something much larger than any single moment, the beginning of a path that will one day lead to everything that follows. But for now you remain here, beside the fire, within the circle of light, at the close of another day that has passed as gently as it began. You remain by the fire as the last light fades completely from the sky, the circle of warmth and glow becoming the center of everything once more. The land beyond slips into shadow, and the group settles into the familiar closeness of night. The rhythm has come full circle. You feel it in your body. The quiet return, the gentle slowing. The fire crackles softly, its light steady, its warmth reaching just far enough to hold the space together. Around you others settle into place, their movements small and unhurried. No one rushes into sleep. The transition unfolds gradually just as it did before. You draw your covering closer, feeling the cool air meet the warmth held near your skin. The balance feels familiar now, expected. You look around, faces lit softly by the fire, shadows moving with each flicker, breathing steady, present. A quiet observation is that this moment repeated countless times across generations forms the foundation of something enduring, not through grand change, but through continuity. You lean back slightly, letting your weight rest against the ground. The sky above is clear again, filled with distant stars that seem unchanged by everything below. They stretch across the darkness, steady and silent. You follow them for a moment, then lower your gaze. The fire remains, the group remains, and you remain within it. What becomes clear is not a single event or discovery, but a pattern. A way of living shaped by the land, by the body, by the quiet exchange between people and their world. You think gently of everything that has unfolded. The morning light entering the shelter, the steady tending of the fire, the gathering, the watching, the learning, the shared moments, both small and significant, the movement across the land, the encounter with others, the quiet care given and received, the markings left behind, the shapes formed, the knowledge passed without words. All of it connected, all of it continuous. Another perspective suggests that this is where the true story of humanity begins. Not in cities or written records, but in these quiet patterns that shaped how people lived, moved and understood the world. You feel the weight of that thought. Not heavy, but grounding. You are part of it, not separate to you, not observing from a distance, but within it. The fire shifts slight, only a small collapse of material, sending a brief rise of sparks into the air before they fade. You watch them. Their light brief, then gone. The night deepens. The sounds beyond the fire return soft and distant, forming the quiet background of the world outside the circle of light. You listen, not searching, just aware. Your body begins to settle again, the gentle pull of rest returning as naturally as it did before. Your breathing slows. Your muscles soften. You lower yourself fully to the ground once more, adjusting your position with small movements until it feels right. The hide beneath you holds a trace of warmth. The air above carries a coolness that feels balanced. Nothing is perfect, but everything is enough. Enough. You close your eyes. The firelight still reaches you, flickering softly against your skin, though you no longer see it. The sounds remain. The presence of others remains. The steady rhythm of the world continues. And as you drift once more towards sleep, the day behind you does not feel finished. It feels complete, not because it ended, but because it followed its path. One day among many, one moment within a much longer story. A small but telling sign is that nothing here exists in isolation. Each action, each choice, each quiet moment becomes part of something that extends far beyond a single lifetime. You feel that continuity now, not as a thought, but as a presence. You are held within it, as the fire burns low, as the night deepens, as the group rests together, and as sleep begins to take you once more. The world quiets further. The fire softens into a low glow, its earlier light now reduced to gentle pulses beneath a thin layer of ash. The warmth remains, but it no longer reaches as far. It rests close to the center, holding those nearest in a quiet circle of comfort. The sounds of the night become softer, more distant, as if the world itself is settling into rest. You lie there, your body fully relaxed now, your breathing slow and even. The ground beneath you feels steady. The air above you feels calm. Nothing presses, nothing demands. The day has passed, the night has come, and you're exactly where you need to be. There is no need to think ahead, no need to hold on to what has already been. Everything moves in its own time. The rhythm continues whether you follow it closely or drift within it. You feel the last traces of awareness begin to fade, not suddenly but gently, like the dimming of light at the end of the day. The fire, the group, the land, all remain, even as you drift further into rest. And somewhere beyond thought, beyond movement, beyond even the sense of time itself, the quiet continuity of this world carries on. Steady, unbroken. Sweet dreams.